Chapter 670. The small hall on the second floor of the Rain Emperor Mountain was open again today. Wu Shan walked out of his room in surprise. Concubine Lan had been missing for 4 years, but she appeared again today and sent a message to him immediately. He didn't dare to be careless. He stopped his cultivation immediately and walked to the small hall quickly. He had always admired Concubine Lan, and now he admired her even more. She, the manager of the second floor, had dared to disappear for 4 years. If Wu Shan hadn't been in charge of the counterattack, the first floor of the Rain Emperor Mountain would have been in chaos. Moreover, many tasks on the second floor had been carried out normally even though Concubine Lan had disappeared. This made the warriors on the second floor complain a lot. Some of them even secretly reported it to the masters on the third floor. However, there was no reply. He always thought something had happened to Concubine Lan, but the Rain Emperor Mountain didn't send another manager. Now that Concubine Lan appeared in the small hall again, it meant that she was still the manager of the second floor. She had disappeared for 4 years inexplicably, but she was still the manager when she came back. It seemed that the rumor that someone was behind Concubine Lan was not groundless. "Greetings, Your Excellency." Wu Shan looked at Concubine Lan, who was still as beautiful and sexy as ever. Looking at her flirtatious light blue nails, he felt at ease. This woman at the peak of the Divine King realm seemed to have a special charm that could make people feel at ease. It seemed that as long as this woman was here, the entire first and second floors of the Rain Emperor Mountain would not be in trouble. "I called you here for nothing. I just want to tell you that when the counterattack starts tomorrow, put me in the 95-27 team. I want to see how he got 14 consecutive victories." Concubine Lan still had a faint smile on her face. It seemed that she didn't feel guilty or embarrassed about her disappearance and dereliction of duty for 4 years. Instead, her eyes lit up with a hint of playfulness and cunning. Wu Shan was speechless. What was Concubine Lan doing? She, a peak of the Divine King realm, dared to participate in a team of divine generals. This was a serious violation of the counterattack rules set by the 5 venerable emperors. If someone found out about this, she would definitely be sentenced to death. Not only her, but he would also be sentenced to death. Therefore, he knelt down on one knee in fear and said, "Your Excellency, you can't do this. You can't do this. Please don't play with me. I will die. Look at you. I won't get you into trouble. I will take responsibility if anything happens." Concubine Lan glanced at him and said with a smile, "Your Excellency, no, you can't do this. The 5 guardians will definitely discover you, and at that time, they will directly kill the entire team that you are in. Besides, once the other tribes knew about this, the other 4 great kings would definitely come and question Queen Goddess. At that time, Queen Goddess would be furious, and the entire Rain Emperor Mountain would be flooded with blood. Your Excellency, this..." Wu shook his head and said, "The guardians of each battlefield were not only responsible for guarding the holy fruits, but they were also responsible for monitoring the teams participating in the battle. With Concubine Lan's strength at the peak of the God King realm, no matter how she disguised herself, the 5 masters would easily see through her at a glance. King An Wu Shan s this. Of Emperor An Venin Wu's son, Concubine Lan is as fun as a child. Letting a warrior take part in the battle continuously has already violated the rules of the Rain Emperor Mountain. Now, you even want to violate the rules of the heaven-defying battle. Although you have people in the Rain Emperor Mountain, the heaven-defying battle was established by the 5 venerable emperors. If you are discovered, even if the person behind you is the empress living in the palace of the Rain Emperor Mountain, the empress will still hand you over to be executed under the pressure of the other 4 venerable emperors. I know you're worried, but you just need to make the arrangements. I've already decided on this matter. You can go now." Concubine Lan still kept a faint smile on her face, playing with her beautiful nails. Her tone was extremely firm, leaving no room for negotiation. "My lord," Wu Shan still wanted to say something, but he found that Concubine Lan had already turned her face away. He sighed helplessly, lifted his heavy feet, and slowly walked out. Lan Fei waved her hand and closed the shield. Then she stretched out a finger and gently slid her fingernail across his delicate red lips. Suddenly she laughed and said, Ha, this little man is so strong. 14 consecutive victories. He actually broke the record of the young Thunder Emperor. I wonder what kind of expression the young Thunder Emperor will have when he hears this news. Ah, I'd like to take a good look. Little man, what secrets are hidden in your thin body? Dong. A familiar sound rang out in the Rain Emperor Mountain again. Tens of thousands of warriors on the first floor of the Rain Emperor Mountain were shocked by this sound. They all woke up with a start and gathered outside as fast as they could. Yi Qinghan opened his eyes. His calm eyes gradually became fiery and finally turned into a strong desire to fight. Boss, you will definitely succeed. Xiao Hei came out of his sleeve, his small eyes full of encouragement and expectation. Ah, Xiao Hei, let's go. Yi Qinghan silently patted Xiao Hei's head. Without saying anything, he stood up and walked out. Swish, swish, swish. As expected, as soon as Yi Qinghan walked out, rows of eyes swept over him. Their eyes were not lifeless like before. Instead, they were full of curiosity, surprise, admiration, envy, all kinds of complicated emotions. Yi Qinghan nodded to the Ox-Head God King, who was standing at the entrance of the cave. Without saying anything, he walked towards the crowd and stood aside in silence. At the same time, he was a little surprised. This time there were 30,000 warriors. There was a battle every 3 months, and hundreds of people died in every battle. At the same time, he was a little surprised. This time there were 30,000 warriors. There was a battle every 3 months, and every time, hundreds of people would die. At the same time, he was a little surprised. This time, there were 30,000 warriors. There was a battle every 3 months, and hundreds of people died in every battle. Where did the Rain Emperor tribe get so many people? It was impossible for so many people to be sucked into the deep pit in the Phoenix Cloud Mountain all the time, right? He didn't have much time to think because the Black Armor Commander was leading a team of team leaders towards the second floor of the stairway. It was still the same unskilled drawing, and there were still no surprises. The 1,000 people started to walk away silently. After walking for a few hundred meters, Yi Qinghan turned around and looked at the Rain Emperor Mountain. He wondered if he would be as lucky as before and returned to the second floor of the Rain Emperor Mountain. 2 days later, the teams of God Emperors and God Kings split up. However, what confused Yi Qinghan was that the Black Armor Commander did not lead the team of God Emperors. Instead, he walked with the team of God Generals. Then, the team of God Generals split up again. The Black Armor Commander, Wu Shan, followed them again. Yi Qinghan knew that Wu Shan was leading the team of God Generals because of him. However, what he did not know was that in his team, there was a cultivator wearing the same gray armor as him standing not far behind him. The cultivator's eyes were wide open as he stared at him with great interest. Chapter 671. Wu Shan was very nervous. Although his face was still cold and calm, his palms were sweating unconsciously. His twitching eyelids betrayed his mood. He knew it was a bit abrupt to appear in the team of Divine Generals, but he still came because one of the warriors in the team was his boss. He had to come. He scanned Concubine Lan with his divine sense again and felt a bit relieved. Concubine Lan was really mysterious. She was disguised as a third-tier divine general warrior. Even though he was a second-tier God Emperor, he couldn't detect her disguise at all. However, when he thought of all the mysteries and weirdness of Concubine Lan, he wasn't too surprised. He took another deep breath and continued to walk forward. The red hillside and the 5 guards were already in sight. "Greetings, Lord 5 guards." Wu Shan saluted them respectfully. He looked calm and indifferent on the surface, but he was extremely worried in his heart. If these 5 lords found out anything, even the Rain Emperor couldn't protect them. These 5 lords had the right to kill them on the spot. "Let's go to the battlefield." An indifferent voice sounded, which sounded like music from heaven to Wu Shan's ears. Wu Shan was puzzled. The guards of the Sacred Fruit Mountain were all 6th-grade war gods. How could they not find out? Was Concubine Lan's disguise so powerful? She could even fool a 6th-grade war god? However, he didn't dare to think too much about it. He quickly led the others to the red hillside. As soon as they entered the battlefield, Yi Qinghan's head exploded, and his killing intent began to break out. However, he didn't panic. Every time he entered the battlefield, it would break out, and the intensity of each attack was the same as the first one. He was already used to it. The warriors who entered the battlefield with him all looked at Yi Qinghan. When they saw his body tremble slightly, their divine powers shone. Their divine powers flickered, and they almost attacked Yi Qinghan. However, when they saw the cold eyes of Commander Wu Shan, they all suppressed their killing intent. They were extremely nervous about Yi Qinghan, not only because Yi Qinghan had won 14 matches in a row. Most importantly, along with his 14 consecutive victories, he had fought 14 times against the odds. All the warriors and demonic beasts who had participated in the battle with him had died in battle. Not a single person or beast had walked out alive. They knew that even if nothing unexpected happened, they would still die in the end. Therefore, when they saw that Yi Qinghan was beginning to be engulfed in murderous aura, they all revealed faint killing intent. Concubine Lan looked at Yi Qinghan, who had calmed down in a moment. There was a trace of shock and a meaningful smile in her eyes. She was very interested in how Yi Qinghan won every time, but what she was most interested in was how Yi Qinghan suppressed the increasingly violent murderous aura in his mind. What surprised her was that Yi Qinghan suppressed the murderous aura so easily. She sat silently in the corner and carefully observed Yi Qinghan. Her eyes curved into a crescent moon, like a cunning fox. Phew, this black line is about to penetrate the soul ocean. It seems that it will completely penetrate the soul ocean after the battle is over. I wonder what strange things will happen after it penetrates the soul ocean. Yi Qinghan exhaled slightly. The murderous aura receded again, and the black line grew longer. He was very sure that when the battle was over, this black line would definitely penetrate the soul ocean. Rustle, rustle, rustle. The battle began with the arrival of a group of red-eyed, violent, and murderous demonic beasts. When the shield turned completely black, all the warriors began to rush toward the demonic beasts. This was the usual practice of the warriors of the four tribes. After all, they were from a different tribe. They couldn't let the demonic beasts take advantage of them, right? Yi Qinghan watched the warriors of the Rain Emperor's tribe begin to quietly separate from him. A trace of helplessness welled up in his heart. He knew that thousands of corpses accompanied his victory. None of the warriors of the Rain Emperor's tribe who had fought with him had returned. Although the warriors of the tribe didn't know the reason, they still subconsciously guarded against him. He didn't care and began to wander around in a low-key manner. In the end, he attracted the attention of a second-tier divine general warrior, who ran to a corner and started fighting. The battle continued to escalate. Almost all the demonic beasts were dead, and more than 100 warriors' corpses had fallen. The atmosphere in the air had become heavy. The black soil was once again dyed dark red by the blood. A chaotic battle was about to begin. Concubine Lan was fighting a warrior with ease. Her eyes were also blood-red. However, there were occasional flashes of light in her blood-red eyes, as well as her leisurely and elegant footwork. Yi Qinghan could easily sense that something was different. He was slightly shocked. Most of the cultivators present had gone mad, and only a few peak-level divine general cultivators were barely holding on. How was this third-level divine general cultivator able to hold on for so long? Concubine Lan smiled quietly. Her eyes began to turn blood-red. Her movements gradually became messy and crazy, and her attacks became much fiercer. She knew that if she didn't pretend to be completely crazy, this brat probably wouldn't use his trump card, right? Sure enough, not long after, she saw a saber that made her eyes bulge. At this moment, she even forgot that the warrior opposite her was attacking her with a long spear. The saber was very strange. It was black and straight, like an iron ruler. However, it had a blade. Furthermore, the hilt at the bottom was like a sword hilt, which was very strange. There were strange patterns on the blade and two big words in bold calligraphy. God Slayer. How is this possible? This saber. How can a human warrior use it? This is unbelievable. Concubine Lan casually waved her hand and sent the warrior opposite her flying. The peak stage divine general warrior flew backward in the air, but his body began to turn into powder like broken glass. This attack was so powerful that it was terrifying. However, concubine Lon didn't pay much attention to her powerful attack. Instead, she stared blankly at the weak figure holding the saber. The slaughter god blade spat out a cold and evil aura, as well as the churning black fog did not require much effort to cause all the crazed martial artists to roll on the ground. However, the strange thing was that concubine Lon was not affected at all. She was still standing quietly in the corner. There was no blood in her eyes. There was only confusion and surprise. When she saw those warriors fall easily under Yi Qinghan's saber, she wasn't too shocked. This saber was no stranger to a portion of the divine world's warriors. This saber had tasted the blood of countless famous experts in the divine world. She wasn't surprised that it could easily kill a few young divine general warriors. She frowned slightly as she silently watched the number of warriors on the field decrease. She watched as the little man was like a ghost that had emerged from the 9 netherworld realm, easily harvesting countless lives. She looked at the black soil that was getting redder and redder. She seemed to have thought of something, and her eyes suddenly lit up. They were so bright that they were even more dazzling than the floating divine crystals. Yi Qinghan brandished the slaughter god saber and chopped down the warriors on the field one by one. As long as he could sense that they were still alive, he would attack them crazily. He would attack them crazily until the aura was completely annihilated. However, he could vaguely sense that there was still a living aura on the field, but he couldn't kill her. It seemed like no matter how hard he tried, that warrior still stood quietly beside him and looked at him. It wasn't until a spot of light appeared on the black shield above his head that he slowly regained consciousness. He didn't have time to be surprised that there was still a warrior standing on the field. He fell straight to the ground. He began to sense the black line in his soul sea. As the murderous aura slowly dissipated, he felt the black line slowly grow longer. In the end, the black line penetrated his soul. It was just that something incomparably terrifying happened. He actually felt that his soul sea had been split into 2. Before he could panic, he suddenly held his head and rolled on the ground. The rolling was extremely intense and crazy. It was even more painful than when he sensed that pair of eyes in the carefree pavilion. In the end, he fainted under concubine Lan's confused gaze. Chapter 672. This, concubine Lan looked at Yi Qinghan with a trace of doubt, surprise, and pity in her eyes. Finally, when she saw that Yi Qinghan was completely motionless, she carefully used her divine sense to check. She was relieved to see that Yi Qinghan had only fainted. Then, when she used her divine sense to explore Yi Qinghan's soul sea, she encountered something strange. She felt relieved again, and her eyes, which were just a little surprised, turned into shock. Her divine sense was bounced back. At this moment, a yellow light shield suddenly appeared in Yi Qinghan's soul sea, directly bouncing her divine sense out. She blinked her eyes again and licked her alluring lips with her pink tongue. It wasn't that she hadn't probed Yi Qinghan's soul before. The first time she met him, she easily invaded his soul. In the end, she discovered that he was thinking of some unsightly things. Moreover, the female lead was actually her. So, she was incomparably angry. She didn't hold back and openly told him that she wanted to play him to death. Just now, before the battle began, she had already invaded his soul and felt that the evil chi in his mind had been easily eliminated. She felt that there were not many souls in this world that she could not invade, but now there was one more, and it was a weak divine general warrior. Therefore, she was extremely shocked and even a little confused. However, what she didn't know was that every time she easily invaded Yi Qinghan's soul, she wouldn't be able to sense a black line. Then, she might be even more shocked. She was not confused for too long. She used her divine sense again and quietly explored the cold soul sea. This time, she was even more careful and gentle. However, when her divine sense approached, it was once again bounced back by the yellow light barrier. It bounced back in a very domineering manner. She looked up and saw that the shield was slowly becoming brighter. She knew that the people outside would soon be able to see the situation inside. Instead of continuing to examine Yi Qinghan's condition, he waved his hand and put away the god crystal and spatial ring. At the same time, he also put away the black saber. Afterwards, she took out a necklace from her space ring and quickly put it on Yi Qinghan's neck. The necklace was very simple and looked very old, as if it had been around for a very long time. This necklace was very strange. After it was put on his neck, a white light flashed, and it quietly disappeared from Yi Qinghan's neck. After doing all this, she reached out a hand and lifted Yi Qinghan up as if he was a sack and walked out. Seeing concubine Lan carrying Yi Qinghan out, Wu Shan, who was outside, breathed a sigh of relief and quickly winked at the captain beside him. Several captains hurriedly walked over, took over Yi Qinghan from concubine Lan's hands, and carried him on their backs. These captains were curious as to why their commander would come to this battlefield. Moreover, 9527 didn't walk out this time. Instead, he was carried out by someone else. Every time 9527 ended a battle, no one was left alive. This was really strange. Furthermore, the martialist who walked out with him was actually a third-layer divine general. This was the strangest thing among the strangest. Seeing that the warriors of the Rain Emperor's tribe had won again, the people of the other three tribes left dejectedly. When the crowd walked towards the five guards saw the unconscious Yi Qinghan. They all revealed puzzled expressions, and then quietly used their divine senses to investigate. However, the five guards didn't find anything special. They could only close their eyes and wave their hands, letting the warriors of the Rain Emperor's tribe go and pick the holy fruits. After a few days, the 10 teams gathered together. In this battle, the Rain Emperor's tribe had lost miserably, because only the team that Yi Qinghan was in had won. However, Wu Shan didn't say much. Instead, he ordered the captains to speed up and rush back to the Rain Emperor Mountain. This was because he found that concubine Lan was walking very fast. Her expression was full of doubt and confusion. He knew that she had something on her mind, so he didn't dare to offend her. The 100 captains were very curious as to why this divine general warrior would be so impudent as to take the lead. However, since Wu Shan didn't say anything, they couldn't say anything. They could only follow him in silence. When they returned to the Rain Emperor Mountain, something even more strange happened. This warrior actually went straight to the second floor. Her footsteps were unusually elegant and without any hesitation. It was as if the second floor was her toilet. However, Wu Shan still didn't say anything this time. Instead, he ordered the captains to carry Yi Qinghan to the second floor. Little brother Yi, the ox-head divine king, stood at the entrance of the cave. There was a hint of surprise and worry in his eyes. He knew that since Yi Qinghan could come back, he definitely wasn't dead. However, since he was being carried by someone, something must have gone wrong. He was very worried. Not only the ox-head god king, at this moment many martial artists in the cave also opened their eyes. They were incomparably shocked as they probed with their divine sense. That was 9,527 that was carried to the second layer. This freak was truly a freak, getting stranger and stranger each time. Don't tell anyone about this battle. Anyone who disobeys will be killed without mercy. Carry 9527 to the Lord's room. Come with me. The others are dismissed. Wu Shan followed concubine Lan's instructions and carried Yi Qinghan into the small hall where concubine Lan lived. Then he quickly retreated. He knew that something must have gone wrong this time. Otherwise, concubine Lan, who had always been smiling, wouldn't have such an expression. Concubine Lan waved her hand and closed the protective shield of the small hall. Then, she carried Yi Qinghan in her hand as if she was carrying a sack. Then, she walked towards the wall in front of her. The strange thing was that the wall seemed to be made of air. Concubine Lan walked directly in. Finally, concubine Lan appeared in a very elegant room. The room was decorated luxuriously, but it wasn't luxurious. It was very fresh and had a faint fragrance, just like a little girl's boudoir. She placed Yi Qinghan on the bed and released her divine senses to check again. After a round of investigation, her frown deepened. She waved her hand and released a faint airflow that wrapped Yi Qinghan up. Finally, Yi Qinghan slowly floated up. She waved her hand again, and Yi Qinghan's armor began to fall off automatically, revealing a blue robe and a handsome face that was without any blood. His body is completely normal, but he hasn't woken up after a few days. What happened to this little man's soul? Could it be related to the supreme slaughter god saber? Concubine Lan flipped her hand, and a long black saber appeared in her hand. However, a faint blue light appeared in her hand and wrapped the hilt of the slaughter god saber. It floated in her palm as if she didn't dare to hold the saber. As soon as the slaughter god saber appeared, an evil and cold aura instantly enveloped the entire room. The supreme slaughter god saber actually appeared in the divine world, and it even appeared in the hands of a little god general. What kind of shocking secret is hidden behind this? Strange, very strange. Concubine Lan stared at the slaughter god saber for a while and sighed faintly. Then, she put the slaughter god saber back into her interspatial ring. She stared at Yi Qinghan for a while again and then muttered nervously, "This kid is so strange. Maybe he can break the curse of the Valley of Gods. Should I ask the four of you to come and take a look?" Sigh. "Forget it. Let's observe for a while first. Little man, wake up. If you can break the curse, let alone a kiss, even if blue rain dedicates itself to you, so what?" Chapter 673. Ud Mountain began to calm down, or rather, the whole Forgotten Land began to calm down. Because half a year had passed, that freak had not gone down to the next level, nor had he participated in the Against battle. The first level had returned to its former peace, and the Against battle had also returned to normal. Concubine Land's figure flashed and reappeared in the fresh and elegant small room. She was in a daze as she looked at the delicate and pretty face that seemed to be sleeping soundly. Her beautiful eyebrows were slightly furrowed, and her red lips were still extremely attractive. It had been half a year, but this guy had been in a coma. There was still a faint light shield over his soul ocean, which she could not detect. She began to worry. Just as she let out a deep sigh and was about to leave, a faint voice rang out in her ears. "My lord, can you save my boss?" Concubine Lan turned her head in surprise and looked at Yi Qinghan's chest. She knew that there was a pet space on Yi Qinghan's chest, but she thought it was Yi Qinghan's spiritual pet, so she did not pay much attention to it. At this moment, this spiritual pet actually took the initiative to talk to her. Moreover, she noticed that this spiritual pet called her boss instead of master. This surprised her a little. Spiritual pets basically signed a master-servant contract with their masters. Without their master's orders, pets generally would not take the initiative to speak. So, was this little man asking for help through this pet? "Little guy, come out and talk to me." Concubine Lan pondered for a moment, then smiled and transmitted her voice to Xiao He. "Without boss's summon, I can't take the initiative to enter the pet space. My lord, can you save my boss?" Xiao He transmitted his voice again anxiously. That's easy." Concubine Lan chuckled and put a beautiful hand on Yi Qinghan's chest. Then, a light blue light appeared on her hand. When her hand left Yi Qinghan's chest, a black airflow came out, slowly condensed, and finally turned into a beautiful small beast. Its dark and intelligent eyes were full of anxiety and worry. Yi Qinghan had been in a coma for half a year, and he had no consciousness at all. Xiao He could sense it very clearly. He kept calling Yi Qinghan in the pet space every day, but there was no response at all. He felt that Yi Qinghan's soul seemed to have undergone a mutation. It was a blank space. He was very worried, incomparably worried. He didn't know if Yi Qinghan would become a vegetable if this mutation continued, and she would fall into a deep sleep forever. Concubine Lan came to see Yi Qinghan every once in a while. He could clearly feel that Concubine Lan had no malice and had given Yi Qinghan a necklace. He felt that the necklace had the love with him. At this moment, he was even more worried. He had no choice but to take the risk and ask Concubine Lan for help. However, the moment Xiao He appeared, Concubine Lan's beautiful eyes suddenly lit up. She blinked in surprise and said, "It's a soul-devouring beast? How could a soul-devouring beast become someone else's spiritual pet?" Hundreds of thousands of years have passed. Has the divine realm changed? Suddenly, hearing the word soul-devouring beast, Xiaohei's hair suddenly stood on end. With a frightening light in his eyes, he stared at concubine Lan nervously. He subconsciously began to retreat slowly. When he retreated to Yi Qinghan's side, he came to his senses and knew that there was no way out. But he still stared at concubine Lan nervously, his eyes full of fear and nervousness. Seeing the frightened Xiaohei, concubine Lan smiled and said gently, "Don't worry, little guy. The reason why I recognized you is that I also knew a soul-devouring beast in the past. I'm curious about one thing. Soul-devouring beasts have always been extremely arrogant. Why did you become someone else's spiritual pet?" Concubine Lan's explanation didn't dispel Xiaohei's doubts. Lord Devour had told him not to expose the fact that he was a soul-devouring beast in the divine realm. Otherwise, it would arouse the greed of the experts, and they would come to catch him. However, when he heard concubine Lan's words, a trace of doubt arose in his heart. Lord Devour had said that there was no third soul-devouring beast in the entire divine realm except for him and his father. Concubine Lan knew a soul-devouring beast. Could it be his father? "Your Excellency, what did the soul-devouring beast you knew look like? Was it exactly the same as me?" After a moment of silence, Xiaohei couldn't help but ask weakly, unable to suppress the doubts and curiosity in his heart. "He was a very special person. I've only seen his original body once, and it was exactly the same as you. Of course, he was much stronger than you. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, he was invincible under the 8th grade war god level. He was very famous in the divine realm. But later, I was trapped in the Apotheosis Valley, so I don't know what happened outside." A complicated look flashed in concubine Lan's eyes. It seemed that she had recalled something from the past. Her face exuded a faint light, which made her pretty face more charming. However, she didn't keep silent for too long. Instead, she turned to look at Yi Qinghan and asked, "Little guy, I'll tell you about these things later. You just asked me to save your boss. Do you know what's wrong with your boss?" Xiaohei turned to look at Yi Qinghan, who was sleeping. He once again sensed Yi Qinghan's situation through the soul connection and found that there was no change at all. He looked up at concubine Lan's beautiful eyes in a daze. After staring at them for a long time, he felt a little relieved. Yi Qinghan once said that to determine whether a person was a good or bad person, one had to look at the deepest part of their eyes. At this moment, he sensed that concubine Lan really didn't have any evil intentions. He said, "Boss, there's something wrong with his soul." "Yes." Concubine Lan wasn't particularly surprised. She just nodded. Something must have gone wrong with boss's soul, and it must be a big problem. She looked at Xiaohei gently and waited for him to tell her the details. Boss's soul has become two, and his two souls are constantly moving. One is moving to the left, and the other is moving to the right. Also, I feel that his mind is completely blank, like two pieces of white paper. "Your Excellency, do you have any way to save my boss? I beg you, if you can save him, I'm willing to do anything for Xiaohei." The more Xiaohei spoke, the more anxious he became, and there was a hint of sobbing in his voice. His eyes were full of panic and helplessness. Before the battle, Yi Qinghan often let his imagination run wild. He wondered if there would be any big problems after the battle, and what would happen after the soul was penetrated by this black line. Xiaohei had been following Yi Qinghan all the time. Of course, he knew what he was worried about. Now, Yi Qinghan's worries had become a reality. His premonition had come true. How could Xiaohei not be worried and anxious? Well, at first, when concubine Lan heard Xiaohei's words, her eyes suddenly lit up. Then, the more she listened, the dimmer her eyes became. Her beautiful eyebrows also frowned slightly. Although there was no expression on her face, a storm was raging in her heart. She had lived for hundreds of thousands of years. She knew a lot about the history of the realm of the gods and the Forgotten Land, but she had never heard of anyone's soul being divided into two halves. Never. After a long silence, she probed Yi Qinghan's soul again. Under Xiaohei's hopeful eyes, she shook her head slightly and sighed. "There's no other way. In this case, Even a supreme divine emperor can't do anything about it. The only person who can save him is himself. Whether he can wake up or not depends on God's will. But I guess if he can wake up, his achievements may be limitless. Chapter 674. Recently, the Oxhead Divine King had been in a bad mood, so his cultivation was often interrupted. Yi Qinghan had been on the second floor for a whole year, but he had not come down. He had not even sent a message. He had eaten up all the holy fruits that Yi Qinghan had left for him. He knew very well that if Yi Qinghan did not come down, he would have to participate in the next battle. Otherwise, he would die of exhaustion of energy. Of course, it was not because of this that he was not in a good mood. He never thought that he had to rely on others for everything. A martial artist's cultivation was to go against heaven and change his fate. How could he reach the top without going through all kinds of twists and turns, challenges and tribulations? He was worried about Yi Qinghan. In his heart, this little brother with a gentle smile had been regarded as a brother that he could befriend for a lifetime. He was a good judge of character. He knew that if nothing happened to Yi Qinghan, he would definitely come down to see him. At the very least, he would send a message to him. However, a year had passed, and there was no news at all. There could only be one reason. Yi Qinghan was in trouble or dead, so he was very worried. Alas, he sighed softly and then forced himself to calm down. There were only 2 months left. He had to find a way to make a breakthrough. Otherwise, he would probably die in the next battle. Alas, at the same time, a soft sigh was heard in a room on the second floor. Concubine Lan withdrew her divine sense. Her coquettish fingernails gently slid across her smooth forehead. Her delicate red lips were slightly pursed, and there was a touch of disappointment and worry in her long and narrow eyes. God-level martial artists rarely fell into a coma. If there was no external force, they would generally not fall into a coma for a month. However, Yi Qinghan had been in a coma for a whole year, which made her originally burning heart a little cold. Big brother, Xiaohe, who was lying beside Yi Qinghan, heard Concubine Lan's soft sigh again. Tears faintly sparkled in his dark eyes. Looking at the face that was as pale as snow and had no signs of life, he continuously transmitted his voice and called out in his heart. His heart was burning with anxiety. 3 months ago, he clearly sensed that Yi Qinghan's soul was no longer mutated, but he still did not wake up. On the contrary, the aura of his body was getting weaker and weaker, and his delicate face was getting paler and paler. There was not the slightest hint of blood on his face, and it was frighteningly pale. If he doesn't wake up within 3 months, perhaps he will never wake up. Concubine Lan sighed again. After saying that, she walked out. The moment she turned around, there was a trace of loneliness on her face. It was not because Yi Qinghan was about to die that she felt lonely. Towards this young man, she only had some appreciation, not even a good impression, let alone sadness over his death. She felt regretful because a good seedling was about to die. Yi Qinghan had given her a glimmer of hope, but this glimmer of hope was about to be extinguished before it was fully ignited. She walked out of the room and finally appeared in the small hall. Wu Shan, who was dressed in black armor, stood respectfully in the small hall. When he saw Concubine Lan suddenly appear from the wall, he was not too surprised. Instead, he bent over and bowed to her. "What's the matter?" Concubine Lan seemed to be a little tired. She sat on the chair and did not raise her head. She just asked lightly. Wu Shan raised his head with a trace of enthusiasm and excitement in his eyes. He hurriedly said, "Your Excellency, this time, 2 people in the tribe stayed in the 5 Emperors Mountain for a full day." "Oh!" Concubine Lan raised her head in surprise. A trace of a smile flashed in her eyes, and her tone became a little cheerful. "Strange things happen every year, but there are many today. In the past, no one could break through in 5 or 10 years, but this year, there are 2 people. Not bad, not bad. Give them double the reward and send them to the 3rd floor. There's one more thing." Seeing that Concubine Lan was in a good mood, Wu Shan smiled. He hesitated for a moment and continued to say, "Emperor Yun's tribe also has a genius. This time, she actually stayed in the 5 Emperors Mountain for a full 10 days. "What?" Hearing this news, concubine Lan, who was just a little surprised, was completely shocked. Her eyes shone brightly, and a surging aura suddenly burst out from her body, completely enveloping Wu Shan opposite her. She stood up and shouted urgently, "Are you sure you're not mistaken?" "Of course I'm not mistaken. How would I dare to make such a big report?" Wu Shan looked at concubine Lan in horror. Feeling the surging aura, he felt as if he was being choked by someone. At this moment, he finally understood why concubine Lan, who was at the peak of the Divine King realm, could sit in the position of the manager of the second floor for so many years. It turned out that she was not a Divine King realm warrior at all. Her real strength was much higher than his, a second-stage Divine Emperor realm. Good? Not bad, not bad. What is a genius? This is a real genius. Concubine Lan suddenly laughed. Her eyes curved into crescent moons, shining brightly like a cunning fox who had seen a house full of chicks. She paced back and forth in the small hall and laughed loudly. She laughed so hard that the branches of flowers trembled. She laughed like a madwoman. Wu Shan touched his nose and smiled awkwardly. He knew that this news would definitely have an impact on concubine Lan, but he didn't expect it to be so big. A freak appeared in the Rain Emperor's tribe. This freak might be able to go to the 4th floor of the Rain Emperor Mountain. However, there had been no news of this freak for a year. Wu Shan thought that this person must be dead. Discovering a freak would definitely be a great contribution to concubine Lan. Unexpectedly, he died in the end. Now, a genius had appeared in another tribe, which was definitely a shock to concubine Lan. Look, she had become a little nervous, hadn't she? Good. I'll leave the 2nd floor to you for the time being. I'm going out for a while. If there's anything, you can send me a message through this. After laughing for a long time, concubine Lan took out a blue jade talisman from her interspatial ring and threw it to Wu Shan. Then, she disappeared into thin air in the small hall. Wu Shan blinked his eyes and looked at the empty small hall. He walked around in disbelief and even used his divine sense to scan the small hall. Finally, after confirming that concubine Lan had indeed disappeared into thin air, his expression suddenly changed. He opened his mouth wide and shouted in a daze, "Teleportation!" A genius had appeared in the Cloud Emperor's tribe. This news not only shocked the entire Cloud Emperor's tribe, but also the entire Forgotten Land. The Forgotten Land, which was a stagnant pool, was suddenly hit by a stone, and it was a huge stone. Immediately, the 5 emperors gathered at the Cloud Emperor Mountain. Then, the experts of the various tribes also rushed to the Cloud Emperor Mountain. This genius was also received by the 5 emperors and the experts of the Forgotten Land in the palace at the top of the Cloud Emperor Mountain. It was said that after the 5 emperors and the experts confirmed the matter, they partied for 10 days and 10 nights in the Cloud Emperor Palace. The warriors of the Cloud Emperor's tribe were generously rewarded by the Cloud Emperor. The entire Cloud Emperor Mountain was immersed in a sea of joy. Chapter 675. Compared to the joy of the Cloud Emperor's tribe, the Rain Emperor's tribe was much calmer. Their tribe could have had a genius, but it seemed that he had fallen. In the small room on the 2nd floor, the atmosphere was even more depressing. Big brother, wake up! Wake up! If you die, how can Xiao Hei stay in this damn place alone? How can Xiao Hei have the courage to live? There were no tears in Xiao Hei's eyes, just numbness and deathly stillness. 3 months had passed. Another 3 months had passed. Yi Qinghan didn't wake up. Instead, his aura was getting weaker and weaker. At this moment, he couldn't sense it anymore. Xiao Hei seemed to see Yi Qinghan's flame of life. It was like an ancient lamp without oil, flickering in the wind, as if it could be extinguished at any moment. Concubine Lan had said that if Yi Qinghan couldn't wake up in 3 months, he might never wake up. Today was the last day of the 3-month period, and, from the looks of it, her prediction wasn't wrong. Xiao Hei gazed at Yi Qinghan's handsome face, recalling the first time he had met Yi Qinghan in Song City. He remembered the time when they had run for their lives together in the barbaric mountain range. He remembered the first time he had called Yi Qinghan, his ecstatic face. He remembered how they had depended on each other in the god-slaying mountain range and the ups and downs along the way. His withered eyes became moist again. He was a child without a father or a mother. In that small valley, he had grown up alone. Although there were many small beasts in that valley, no small beast played with him. No one cared about him. He was lonely as the snow. Later, Yi Qinghan summoned him. He had a master, a brother, a friend, and a father. With so many feelings intertwined, Yi Qinghan meant everything to him. Thus, when Lord Devour wanted to separate them, Yi Qinghan also said that he wanted to terminate the contract with him. He cried and told Yi Qinghan that he would die. Therefore, when Yi Qinghan was sucked into the Apotheosis Valley in the Phoenix Cloud Mountain Range, he did not hesitate to pounce over. He had already entered the mature stage and understood many principles. He knew that he had to have his own life, but he felt that if he left Yi Qinghan, his world would no longer be colorful, fun, or bright boss. When he sensed that Yi Qinghan's aura had suddenly become weaker, he suddenly felt his vision darken, and he almost fainted. No, 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 no. Xiao He shook his head continuously, his entire body crouching on Yi Qinghan's chest, his eyes gazing at Yi Qinghan. A small claw gently rubbed against his face. The sharp claw scratched his face, causing a trace of dark red blood to flow out. Compared to his pale face, it was a ghastly sight. Yi Qinghan's body was getting colder, and his aura was getting weaker. Xiao He's eyes opened wider, and his claw stopped moving in the air. Boss! Boss! All of a sudden, his claw shivered unceasingly, and his two small eyes bulged. His small mouth opened wide as he screamed. Then his vision went dark, and he fainted. A childish voice arose in the small room. It was so miserable, so painful, and so heart-wrenching at this moment. Yi Qinghan's aura vanished. His entire body became so cold, as if he had fallen into an eternal sleep. Brother! Little Han! Qinghan! 3 shivering voices arose in the room on the second floor of the Cold Heart Pavilion. Yi Qingyu, Yi Qingwu, and Yi Qingcheng opened their eyes, stopping their cultivation. Just now, the 3 of them felt their hearts palpitate at the same time, a palpitation that made their hearts contract. Yi Qingyu had become a god realm expert for so many years. Without Yi Qinghan by her side, she didn't think that life was fun. Thus, she had devoted herself to her cultivation. Several years ago, she had finished refining the divine crystal that Lord Devour had given her. Now, she had started to refine the peak god general crystal that Yi Qinghan had given her. She had successfully broken through to the god general realm. Although Yi Qingwu had neglected her cultivation for several years, she had broken through to the heavenly god realm. Yu Qingcheng, who had the lowest realm among the 3 women, had broken through to the heavenly god realm several months ago. When a warrior reached a certain realm, he or she would have an indescribable feeling in their hearts. Perhaps they had a premonition of the coming calamity, or someone they cared about a lot had died. Brother, little Hans, Qinghan. The 3 women looked at the empty room, bewildered for a while. Then, they felt their hearts palpitate harder. The 3 of them were so frightened. They jolted up, screaming in fright as they dashed out of the room. When they got out of the room, they saw the fear on each other's faces. At that moment, their hearts shivered and their bodies shivered. Yi Qingyu slid helplessly to the floor. She didn't have the elegance of an empress. The 3 beautiful faces were now snow white, so white that it was scary. Mother, Aunt Qingcheng, Aunt Qingyu, what's wrong with you? After several years, Yi Sahan had become a teenager, and her face was more similar to Yi Qinghan's. He was in the hall on the first floor when he heard the 3 women's screams. He was a little surprised as he walked to the second floor. However, when he saw the scene, he dashed forward in fright. However, the 3 of them only glanced at him indifferently and continued to stand there in a daze. After a while, Yi Qingyu's eyes shone with determination. Then, she silently walked to the roof. Yi Qingwu and Yu Qingqing's eyes shone with passion as they followed Yi Qingyu to the roof. After walking out of the roof, Yi Qingyu waved her hand, and a strong divine power spread out from her hand. Then, like a ripple, it spread towards the flame dragon continent, waking up all the god-grade experts of the flame dragon continent. It didn't take long before many figures appeared on the Chilling Heart Pavilion's rooftop. The god-grade experts of the flame dragon continent didn't hesitate when they heard the Empress order. They rushed over immediately. Something happened to the Frost Arch. The three of us have decided to go to the Purple Island in 3 days. We will go to the Divine Realm. You don't need to persuade us. We can't change our decision. If anyone wants to go with us, come to the Purple Island in 3 days. Yi Qingyu didn't look at the surprised expressions of the people around her. Then, the 3 women left the shocked god-grade experts behind and walked into the carefree pavilion. You want to go to the Divine Realm? Elder Lu looked at the 3 people's cold faces. He knew that it was useless to say anything else, so he didn't try to persuade them. He just asked the 3 of them to wait for a while. Then, he quickly flashed out of the Chilling Heart Pavilion and teleported to the Dark Forest. But when he found that little rabbit again, that little rabbit brought him a shocking piece of news. The Flame Dragon plane had been bought by Yi Qinghan, and the continent was now safe. Moreover, the peak Heavenly God Realm Divine Beast on the Purple Island had been replaced. If anyone wanted to go to the Divine Realm, please go ahead. When Elder Lu brought this news back to the Chilling Heart Pavilion, the continent's god-grade experts were shocked once again. However, they didn't feel as happy as they had imagined. Instead, they all fell silent, their expressions incomparably complicated. 3 days later, countless experts of the Flame Dragon continent gathered on the Purple Island. They watched as the 3 empresses and several god-grade experts stepped into the Purple Island's teleportation array and began their long journey to find the Frost Emperor. In the Divine Realm's Phoenix Cloud mountain range, an incomparably strange incident happened the day before. The woman who was protected by the Longyang City, Beacon Smoke City, and Misty City, the ice-cold woman who would only stare blankly at the deep pit and never say a word. However, yesterday, she suddenly let out a heart-wrenching scream that scared all the cultivators in the Phoenix Cloud mountain range. Then, an even stranger incident happened. The woman suddenly laughed loudly and spat out a mouthful of blood. Her snow-white dress was dyed red. In the end, under everyone's shocked gazes, she jumped into the deep pit without any hesitation. Like a moth, she rushed towards the raging flames without any hesitation and disappeared into the bottomless pit. Chapter 676. Dead, Big Brother is dead. Xiao He slowly woke up and looked at Yi Qinghan, who had lost all signs of life. His eyes became incomparably hollow. His small body seemed to have no bones at this moment, as he lay limply on the bed. Big Brother is dead. What's the point of me living? Xiao He murmured softly. There was no sadness or pain in his voice, only a deep sense of loneliness and confusion. He reached out a claw and kept rubbing Yi Qinghan's ice-cold face. His movements were incomparably gentle, as if he was afraid of waking up Yi Qinghan from his deep sleep. Little ant, where are you? Quickly come out and save Big Brother. If you don't come out, I won't recognize you as my little ant anymore. Quickly come out, sob, I'm begging you. After a while, Xiao He anxiously roared at the air. He roared hysterically. All the hairs on his body stood up. He bared his teeth and looked abnormally ferocious. However, apart from his childish voice, there was no other sound in the air, and no one appeared. Big Brother, don't be afraid. Xiao He won't let you go on your journey alone. Xiao He will come to accompany you. Let's explore the 9 Nether Realm together. Suddenly, Xiao He grinned and a dagger appeared in his little claw. It was a dagger that emitted a divine light. Then he opened his mouth and forcefully stabbed the dagger into his mouth. He knew that his skin was incomparably hard, so he chose to stab the weakest part of his mouth. He chose to end his life from his throat. However, he had forgotten one thing. He had a necklace in his body. Although the necklace was simple and unadorned, it was very famous. The necklace was called the Love of the Dancing Butterfly. It was devouring butterfly's famous divine weapon in the God realm. When the necklace lit up, When the room was once again filled with that domineering and suffocating aura, when the dagger was repelled by that aura, it directly sank into the wall. Xiaohei woke up with a start. He angrily reached out his little claw and tried to pull the necklace. However, no matter how much strength he used, he was unable to tear off the necklace. Why was this aura so familiar? That's right, it's the aura of the dancing butterfly. Could it be that this little soul-devouring beast is the Soul Emperor's son? Just as Xiaohei was frantically pulling at the necklace, a figure suddenly walked out from one of the walls of the room and looked at Xiaohei with slight surprise. Then, when he saw Yi Qinghan on the bed, his surprised face instantly became even more surprised. Xiaohei suddenly heard someone talking. At first, he looked over in surprise, but when he saw that it was Concubine Lan, he became extremely disappointed. If Concubine Lan could be saved, Yi Qinghan would have saved her long ago. He didn't care whose son he was. For him, Yi Qinghan was his father. But now his father was dead. "Madam, can you help me remove this necklace?" Xiaohei looked at Concubine Lan with hollow eyes and pleaded, "Why do you want to take it off?" Concubine Lan's surprised eyes were still fixed on Yi Qinghan. At this moment, Xiaohei suddenly spoke. She answered casually, feeling a little strange. Xiaohei turned his head to look at Yi Qinghan and said firmly, "Boss is dead, and I don't want to live anymore. I want to go to the Nine Nether Realm with Boss." "Idiot!" A cold and delicate shout made Xiaohei's eardrums hurt. He looked at the cold light in Concubine Lan's eyes and the slightly angry expression on her face. He couldn't figure out why she was so angry when he was seeking death. "I should have known that there are so many abnormal super-divine beasts like the soul-devouring beast in this world. Your father was such an amazing, peerless expert, but how did he give birth to such an idiot like you? If it weren't for the love of the dancing butterfly, and if I hadn't come back in time, you would have died a wrongful death. Alas! Like father, like son, your father was also a very affectionate person in the past." Concubine Lan said faintly and lectured Xiaohei. Then, she looked at Yi Qinghan with a hint of surprise in her eyes and said, "Your boss is not dead." "What?" Xiaohei's body suddenly shook. He turned his head to look at Yi Qinghan and then sensed again through his soul, but the situation was exactly the same as before. He glared at Concubine Lan angrily and said, "You lied to me. Boss's aura is completely extinguished. He's dead, he's dead." "Idiot!" Concubine Lan scolded him again and looked at Xiaohei with a hint of disappointment. It seemed that she was sad that such a talented soul emperor had such an idiot son. She pointed at Yi Qinghan and said, "You saw a dead warrior, but his divine crystal was still in his body and his ring was still on his hand. Also, didn't you have a soul contract with him? Did you cancel the contract?" Xiaohei blinked his eyes and looked at the rings on Yi Qinghan's hand. Then, he used his divine consciousness to sense the divine crystal in his lower abdomen. When he thought of the soul connection in his mind, he suddenly realized something. His hollow eyes lit up in an instant, and the faint death chi on his body was instantly replaced by exuberant vitality and ecstasy. It was instantly replaced by exuberant vitality and ecstasy. His entire body started to tremble, and 2 streams of hot tears flowed down his face. Yes, he's not dead, he's not dead. Boss is not dead. How could he die? Boss is definitely not dead. Boss doesn't like Yi. Ho, I'm so happy. Xiaohei was in a mess. He paced back and forth on the bed like a fool. One moment he was giggling, the next moment he was frowning, and the next moment he was talking to himself. He was extremely crazy. Don't be too happy too early. Your boss's situation is very strange. His vitality is obviously extinguished, but his soul hasn't dissipated yet. If his soul completely dissipates, he will also die. Concubine Lan looked at Xiaohei, who was extremely happy and couldn't help but attack him. Then, she began to probe Yi Qinghan's situation again. Yi Qinghan's current situation had once again broadened her horizons. A warrior was actually still alive in such a state. The faint light shield in his mind was still shining, but she still couldn't probe it. She couldn't know what was happening inside. Little soul-devouring beast, you better sit on the side obediently. I'm going to cast a spell to save your boss. Otherwise, his body will be completely destroyed. At that time, his body will be useless, and his soul will definitely scatter. Concubine Lan sighed helplessly as she looked at Xiao He, who had come to her side and was looking at her nervously. Then, she took out an exquisite jade box from her interspatial ring and sighed regretfully. You're lucky, boy. You have to work hard and wake up. You should know that my blue rain pills can be sold for hundreds of billions of divine stones in the divine realm. If you dare to waste them, I won't spare you. After saying this nonsense, Concubine Lan gently opened the jade box. A light blue divine pill floated out of it. Concubine Lan grabbed it and threw it directly into Yi Qinghan's mouth. Then, she glanced at Yi Qinghan with a complicated expression and untied Yi Qinghan's robe, revealing his broad shoulders and two strong pectoral muscles. The shyness on her face disappeared in a flash. Then, she gently placed her beautiful little hand on Yi Qinghan's chest. A light blue airflow slowly flowed out of her hand and finally entered Yi Qinghan's body. Chapter 677. Qinghan, I'm here for you. Yi Yaorao looked around at the barren landscape, at the dark sky, and at the black, lifeless soil around her. However, she did not feel the slightest bit of worry or fear in her heart. Instead, an intoxicating smile appeared on her cold face. She closed her eyes and sucked in a mouthful of air greedily, as though there was Yi Qinghan's aura in the air. Welcome to Forgotten Land. You have two choices. One is to join Thunder Emperor tribe, the other is to die. A group of martial artists walked out from the back of the hill like ghosts. However, when the leader at the front of the group looked at Yi Yaorao, there was a flash of surprise in his lifeless eyes. Then, the surprise turned into joy. However, he hid it very well. It flashed for a moment, and his eyes became indifferent again. I choose to join. Yi Yaorao didn't hesitate. Before she found Yi Qinghan, she couldn't die. She put on her purple armor and followed the group of warriors forward. Half a month later, they arrived at Thunder Emperor tribe. After settling Yi Yaorao and the other newbies, the leader walked up to the second floor quickly and entered the hall where the manager of the second floor, Emperor God Xiufeng, stayed. Emperor God Xiufeng's hall was a few times more luxurious than imperial concubine lands. Emperor God Xiufeng was enjoying himself as he sat on the lion chair with a seductive lady in his arms. He didn't care about the leader who was kneeling on the ground. He continued to extend his hand into the seductive lady's robe and kneaded it wantonly, causing the lady to pant. Mister, I found a special warrior today. The leader was clear about Emperor God Xiufeng's unique hobby. He wasn't surprised at all and didn't dare to lift his head. Continue. Emperor God Xiufeng didn't stop his hand movement. His other hand slid down. Before the seductive lady's eyes, he extended his hand into the lady's skirt between her thighs and started moving it forcefully. The leader looked straight ahead and said quickly, It's a beautiful lady and she has a cold ice jade body. Are you sure? Emperor God Xiufeng's hand movement suddenly stopped. Then his bell-like eyes widened with radiance as he stared at the leader and shouted coldly, I'm sure. Number 10086, sir. You can check it out. The squad leader nodded and answered affirmatively. Good. I'll remember your contribution. Go down. Emperor God Xiufeng's face was filled with ecstasy. His hand that had stopped started twisting again. The woman's breathing became more rapid. In the end, she let out a series of rapid moans. Her body trembled violently and convulsed continuously. Her exposed skin also became crimson red. She looked extremely alluring. Emperor God Xiufeng laughed heartily and took out his lower hand. There was a sparkling and translucent liquid on it. He extended his hand to the side of the woman's mouth. The woman glanced at Emperor God Xiufeng with her seductive eyes and licked him with her pink tongue. Cold ice jade body, what a good cold ice jade body. The Forgotten Land finally has a cold ice jade body. Emperor God Xiufeng's consciousness swept through the first floor easily, and he found the cold lady who was sitting quietly. There was greed and excitement in his eyes. "My lord, what's wrong with the cold ice jade body? Is it as comfortable as my body?" The seductive lady sucked all the translucent liquid on Emperor God Xiaofeng's hand clean. Then, she attached herself to Emperor God Xiaofeng's body like a snake. She used one hand to stroke his strong muscles gently, while her other hand extended downwards and started stroking gently. "Baby, of course your body is comfortable. However, your mouth is even more comfortable." Emperor God Xiaofeng laughed heartily again. Then, he pressed the seductive lady's head and pressed her under his crotch. With a jolt of divine power, her black robe instantly turned into shreds. A raging dragon was raising its head ferociously. The lady lifted her head and revealed a flirtatious smile to Emperor God Xiaofeng. Then, she stuck out her tongue and started sucking. "How do I get the cold ice jade body?" Emperor God Xiaofeng thought to himself as he leaned back on the lion chair with delight. He understood that if he didn't report such a jade body to the higher-ups, it would definitely be troublesome. However, if he were to report it, he definitely wouldn't have a part in it. After hesitating for a long time, he made up his mind and humphed, "Forget it. Let's do it secretly." Concubine Lan of Rain Emperor's tribe let that freak participate in the battle 15 times consecutively. It's against the rules, but the 5 emperors didn't say anything. Maybe the 5 emperors are busy with other matters. Let's get it secretly first. Emperor God Xiaofeng thought it through, and his expression became more joyful. Then he pressed his hands on the lady's head, and his lower body started to move. The atmosphere in the room became seductive. 3 days, 5 days, 10 days. Xiaohe didn't move at all for 10 days. He had been lying by the bed and looking at Yi Qinghan dumbfoundedly. He was looking forward to it every second. However, Yi Qinghan still didn't have any aura. It was as though he had become a real, living dead buzz. Concubine Lan's slender figure appeared in the room. She would come to check on Yi Qinghan every day to stabilize his body. If his body was damaged, his soul would definitely dissipate in advance. She still stretched out her ivory-like hand and attached it to Yi Qinghan's chest. Then, light blue divine power emitted from her palm and slowly nourished Yi Qinghan's body to keep him alive. After a while, she retracted her hand and shook her head at Xiaohe, who was full of hope. Then, she glanced at Yi Qinghan's pale face and sighed. Then she walked out. When she walked towards the wall and was about to disappear into the room, she suddenly stopped and turned around. However, she suddenly stopped and turned around. Her beautiful eyes were filled with astonishment. This astonishment continued to expand into shock, and finally, the shock turned into a hint of joy that couldn't be hidden. Xiaohe, who was lying feebly on the bed, suddenly lit up at this moment. Then his small body instantly tightened, and his hair stood on end. He quickly closed his eyes and sensed for a while. Then he suddenly opened them, and his whole face became ecstatic. He turned his head to look at Yi Qinghan and then at Concubine Lan. He roared in a trembling voice, "Vitality! Vitality! This is vitality! This is vitality! Your Excellency, there is vitality in my boss's body. He is coming back to life. He can be saved. Oh no! Roar, roar! What a strong vitality! What a strong soul strength! He is indeed a genius. Concubine Lan didn't choose the wrong person. Concubine Lan moved lightly and stretched out her divine sense to inspect Yi Qinghan's body. After that, she opened her beautiful red lips and smiled lightly. Her eyes were filled with joy, and she was like a blooming peony with boundless charm. She was very happy that a genius had appeared in Emperor Yun's tribe. However, she would be even happier if Emperor Rain's tribe also had a genius who was even weirder than that genius. With the appearance of these 2 geniuses, she seemed to see a glimmer of light in the dark sky of the forgotten land, a glimmer of dawn. Chapter 678 10866. Do you understand what I'm saying? God Emperor Xiaofeng smiled as he looked at the cold lady in front of him. He could feel the cold air that was being emitted from her body and looked at her smooth skin. He was thinking in his heart that if he could hug this lady in his arms and have a good time with her, what kind of ecstasy would that be? I understand. Yi Yaorao nodded her head faintly. She had a cold personality and was too embarrassed to ask others when she came to Thunder Emperor tribe. However, God Emperor Qiu Feng, who claimed to be the manager of the second floor, had told her a lot of things. Although this person's lecherous gaze was very annoying, Yi Yaorao still decided to continue listening. Emperor God Qiu Feng's thick black eyebrows creased slightly as he looked at the woman's indifferent expression. He had told her about the dangers of the heaven-defying battle and the benefits of the second level. Who would have thought that this woman would not be moved at all? He had talked for a long time, but she only replied with 3 words. Could it be she didn't have any special thoughts? 10866. Do you want to go to the second floor? God Emperor Qiu Feng decided to be more direct. Although he always liked to be more tactful and liked to flirt with ladies, he still wanted to be more direct. Yes, Yi Yaorao replied honestly. However, she only said 1 word and didn't say anything else. F*CK. God Emperor Qiu Feng cursed in his heart. Since you why don't you show some expression? Do you think there is a free lunch in this world? He muttered to himself for a moment and said, there is a lady in the tribe who admires you a lot. If you know how to behave, I think she will be willing to take the risk and break the tribe rules for you. She will also help you to go to the second floor and enjoy life. Thank you, lords. Yi Yaorao was still cold. Although she thanked them, she didn't show any other expression. She was cold to people and didn't know much about the world. However, she was very smart and could see through some people and some things easily. For example, Yi Qing'an back then and this old pervert now. Damn it! God Emperor Qiu Feng almost had the impulse to force himself on her, but he didn't. He could explain that he didn't notice the cold jade body, and he didn't notice it. However, if he forced himself on a woman, the crime would be huge. The new Lightning Emperor was much easier to talk to than the old Lightning Emperor in many aspects. However, when it came to forcing women, he could not tolerate it the most. If he saw it, he would kill without mercy. All these years, there were a few experts in the Thunder Emperor tribe who were much stronger than him, who were personally torn into pieces by the Thunder Emperor. What should we do? Emperor God Qiu Feng looked at the lady's enchanting body and her voluptuous breasts. He felt as though there were 100 ants biting his heart, and it was extremely itchy. A wife is not as good as a concubine is not as good as a mistress, and the one that cannot be stolen is often the most seductive. This stupid girl, this idiot. God Emperor Qiu Feng muttered to himself. He thought to himself that if this lady were to participate in the battle with a cultivation of first-level divine general realm, she would definitely die. Why not? She was not allowed to participate in the battle? If she was starving to death, she would naturally understand? God Emperor Qiu Feng sighed helplessly. He was about to stand up and let the lady suffer a little before he threatened and enticed her. But he didn't expect to see Yi Yaorao suddenly laugh, and this laugh scared him. This Yi Yaorao had been in the cave for more than an hour. Not to mention laughing, she didn't even speak a word. Now that she laughed, she was simply more beautiful than the lotus on the snow mountain. My lord, can you tell me about the other things in the Forgotten Land? I'm very curious about this place. Yi Yaorao suppressed her disgust and laughed sweetly as she spoke softly. Of course, this is not a problem. What do you want to ask? Just say it. There is nothing in the Forgotten Land that I, Lord Qiu Feng, do not know. God Emperor Qiu Feng suddenly felt flattered. He was afraid that if you did not speak and did not have any requests, as long as you spoke and had requests, he was confident that he could get this lady. He immediately patted his chest and said heroically, My lord, can you tell me about the 5 tribes? For example, some experts in the tribes, some strange people, some strange things, and so on. When Yi Yaorao heard about Zhan, she actually had a bad premonition in her heart. Combined with her sudden palpitations in the Phoenix Cloud mountain range, she was very afraid. However, she did not give up and still had some hope. About that, the Forgotten Land will first talk about the 5 emperors. Of the 5 emperors, 3 are men, 1 is a woman, and 1 is a Class 8 demonic beast, Inferno beast. Of course, it's not good to talk about the 5 lords. God Emperor Qiu Feng spoke frankly and with assurance. His face was filled with confidence. When he saw Yi Yaorao listening to him with interest, he couldn't help but speak more cheerfully. He basically told her all the big and small matters in Forgotten Land. One was talking, one was asking questions, one was talking happily, one was listening attentively, and from time to time Yi Yaorao would ask some questions. The two of them chatted for several hours, and it seemed like they were having a good time. "And many thanks, my lord. When I have time, I will consult my lord." After asking what she wanted to ask, and knowing what she wanted to know, Yi Yaorao's face suddenly turned cold. She no longer had the heart to pretend to be polite with this person and coldly asked him to leave. And God, Emperor Chiu Foam was stunned. This woman was smiling just now. Why did she suddenly change? This isn't fun. This isn't fun. However, no matter what God Emperor Chiu Foam said, Yi Yaorao still remained cold and silent. She didn't even look at him. Even if God Emperor Chiu Foam was a fool, he knew that Yi Yaorao's expression of being able to learn immediately was fake. He couldn't help but harumph and leave. He had decided to make Yi Yaorao suffer. When the time came, he would force her to kneel down and beg him. Give him, Rain Emperor tribe. "Qing'an, wait for me." Yi Yaorao revealed a faint smile on her face, and it brought a bit of light to the dark cave. "You're awake. You're awake. Boss, you're finally awake. You scared me to death, do you know?" Xiaohei looked at Yi Qing'an as he slowly opened his eyes. He looked at the familiar pure black eyes. He told himself not to cry. It was a good thing that Boss woke up. It was a happy occasion. He couldn't cry. He couldn't cry. However, his tears still flowed out, and he cried to his heart's content. "Xiaohei, don't cry, don't cry. Boss has made you worry." After sleeping for more than a year, Yi Qing'an's body wasn't weak at all. When he opened his eyes, he was originally in a daze. However, when he saw Xiaohei crying so sadly, Yi Qing'an immediately comforted Xiaohei, even though he didn't know what happened. "Boss!" Xiaohei wanted to say something. However, she was choked with sobs and couldn't say anything. She threw herself into Yi Qing'an's body and grabbed his clothes tightly with her two little claws, as though she was afraid that he would disappear in the blink of an eye. "And then, Xiaohei, wait a minute. My body seems to have undergone some changes." As Yi Qing'an comforted Xiaohei, he began to check his body with his divine sense. This check scared him to the point that his face turned pale. He quickly carried Xiaohei to the side of the bed and began to use his inner vision. When Xiaohei saw Yi Qing'an being so serious, she quickly stopped crying and looked at Yi Qing'an nervously, waiting for his explanation. Damn. How did this young master's soul become like this? Also, how did my soul become so strong? This should be comparable to the soul of a divine king, right? Yi Qing'an suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes were filled with shock. He licked his lips and muttered in disbelief. Chapter 679. In his soul sea, there was originally an ocean-like sponge that emitted a hazy glow. At this moment, this ocean had split into two, as if one ocean had become two separate lakes. In the middle, there was a bridge. The bridge was black and glowed with black light. It was that black line, but it was several times thicker. This was not important. What was important was that Yi Qing'an realized he could actually multitask. Two souls could operate at the same time. One soul was emitting divine sense and looking inside his body, while the other soul was thinking about this strange phenomenon. And the strength of the two parts of his soul sea had increased. When combined, it was about 150% of its original size. This meant that his soul realm had at least reached the divine king realm. This was simply inconceivable. Yi Qing'an was stunned for a moment. He closed his eyes and began to meditate. He decided to do an experiment. He would let one part of his soul comprehend the laws and start cultivating, while the other part would start to let his imagination run wild. In the end, although it was a little chaotic at first, it succeeded in the end. Then, Yi Qing'an opened his eyes and let the cultivating soul continue cultivating. He stood up and walked down the bed. He poured a cup of tea and began to drink it leisurely. In the end, there was still no effect. The other half of his soul was still cultivating. This young master has become Zhou Batong. I know the left and right in turf fighting art. Mother of asterisk her, this is too strange. Yi Qinghan spat out a mouthful of tea on the ground. Not caring about Xiao Hei's confused eyes, he began to ponder. Or rather, he began to fear. The soul was the foundation of a martial artist. Now his foundation had become a different kind. It was like someone waking up and realizing that they had become a dragon. The first thing that came to his mind was not that he had an abnormal ability or excitement. Instead, he would feel fear, because he was no longer the same as a human. He had become a different kind. No matter how powerful he was, he could no longer be considered a human. He was no longer his original self. He would instinctively feel fear, and even madness. The soul was a part of the body, but this part was different from a normal person. How could he not be terrified? After a long period of silence and countless experiments, he finally confirmed one thing. There were two souls in his mind. The two souls did not interfere with each other and could be used separately or together. In other words, he could think of one thing or two things at the same time. Xiao Hei, how long have I been unconscious? What happened during that time? In his panic, Yi Qinghan sobered up and began to trace the cause and process of the incident. Boss, are you all right? Looking at Yi Qinghan's nervous behavior, Xiao Hei was also very afraid. However, looking at Yi Qinghan's serious expression, he began to tell Yi Qinghan in detail what happened after he fell unconscious. What? Concubine Lan joined the battle with me and knew about my soul mutation? Yi Qinghan's face suddenly darkened. His soul mutation had turned him into a different kind of person. He instinctively regarded this as his most private secret. Other than Xiao Hei, he did not even want to tell his wife. Just like how his soul came from Earth, other than Xiao Hei, Yi Qingyu, and the others, no one knew about this secret. Now, Concubine Lan actually knew about his soul mutation. Damn it, I must take this woman down. I must take her down. Yi Qinghan felt a hidden danger. Concubine Lan was very mysterious. As the manager of the second level of the Rain Emperor Mountain, she could actually sneak into the team of God General Realm cultivators. No wonder he felt that her eyes were so familiar. Since she could disguise herself as a God General Realm cultivator, she must also be a God King Realm cultivator on the surface. Now, this demon-like woman actually knew about his biggest secret, and even took his slaughter god blade. If he did not take her down, Yi Qinghan felt that he would always be in danger. This made him restless and lose his appetite. He thought about the first time he met Concubine Lan and her eyes that could see through people's hearts. He knew that Concubine Lan must have some kind of mind-reading skill, or that her soul was extremely powerful and could easily invade his soul. Yi Qinghan made up his mind that when he met Concubine Lan in the future, he must not think about his soul mutation. She probably only knew that his soul had become two, but she did not know that his two souls could be used separately and would not affect each other. Speak of the devil, and he will appear. While Yi Qinghan was in a daze, the wall in front of him flashed with a white light. A slim figure in blue walked out of the wall like a fairy. When she saw Yi Qinghan sitting on the bed and looking in her direction, her eyes suddenly lit up, making the room look even more gorgeous. Xiao Hei, enter the beast battle space. Yi Qinghan was stunned, but he laughed and transmitted his voice to Xiao Hei. Before he took down Concubine Lan, he did not want her to know too many of his secrets through Xiao Hei. When Xiao Hei turned into a shadow and entered his chest, he stared at Concubine Lan's delicate red lips with an aggressive light in his eyes and said faintly, "Miss Concubine Lan, I won." Concubine Lan was stunned for a moment, but then she came to her senses. Yi Qinghan's words had been very clear. He had won 15 consecutive victories, so he was qualified to get the bet. "I only want a kiss from you, miss." Thinking of Yi Qinghan's arrogant declaration and looking at his fiery eyes, Concubine Lan felt a kind of emotion that had not appeared in her heart for hundreds of thousands of years. An emotion that had not appeared in Concubine Lan's heart for hundreds of thousands of years quietly surged into her heart at this moment. She was a little shy. How many years had it been? Ever since that man's death, she had never fallen in love again. She had never had any interest in the affairs of a man and a woman. But today, because of a young man and a bet, she actually felt shy. Concubine Lon came to her senses in an instant, and her face turned cold. She thought that she had made a mistake, so she forcibly cut off the strange emotion in her heart. Then she said coldly, "You seem to have forgotten one thing. If it weren't for me, you would have been a corpse by now." Huh? Yi Qinghan stood up and laughed at the sky. The light in his eyes became more aggressive. Since he had made up his mind to take down Concubine Lon, he had to do it at all costs. Therefore, he did not take a step back, and the smile on the corner of his mouth became wider. "It's undeniable that I'm standing here alive now, which means that you've lost." Since she had lost, she had to accept her defeat. Yi Qinghan's aggressiveness made Concubine Lan's face change again. How could this young man be so stubborn? For hundreds of thousands of years, she had never been angry because of anything. But at this moment, she was completely annoyed. She stared at Yi Qinghan coldly and quietly released the chill from her body. The air in the whole room seemed to freeze. Her eyes flickered with a cold light. After a long time, she said, "Young man, I think it's better to be grateful and know when to advance and retreat. Don't you think so?" "Ha!" Yi Qinghan laughed again. His laughter was so heroic and arrogant. He stared at Concubine Lon and slowly walked toward her like a wolf in the middle of the night. The corners of his mouth curved into an extremely evil arc, and he said resolutely, word by word, "If I can't get a kiss from you, Yi Qinghan would rather die." Chapter 680. Listening to Yi Qinghan's arrogant and domineering words and smelling the faint breath of the man in front of her, she thought of the skin contact with Yi Qinghan when she was healing him. Concubine Lon was a little confused, and a strange feeling surged in her heart. However, this strange feeling did not last long, and it was instantly replaced by anger. "Who am I? How dare this young divine general treat me like this? How dare he threaten me? How many years has it been? Who dares to treat me like this? Does he want to die?" Without hesitation, Concubine Lon gently waved her hand forward. A light blue airflow, like a water ripple, came out of her white, jade-like palm and then pressed on Yi Qinghan's chest. Bang! As expected, Yi Qinghan was directly sent flying and hit the wall heavily. Then he bounced back and rolled on the floor a few times before he stood up with difficulty. Ahem, ahem. After coughing a few times, Yi Qinghan slowly stood up and raised his head. His face became a little pale, and a trace of blood slowly flowed from the corner of his mouth. The combination of red and white made the evil smile at the corners of his mouth look even weirder, giving him a unique temperament. He grinned and didn't mind Concubine Land's slap at all. Instead, he said gently, "Why did you hold back, miss? Do you not have the heart to kill me?" Concubine Land's face became even more livid. Hundreds of thousands of years of cultivation had been completely destroyed today. She turned her head away as if she didn't dare to look directly at Yi Qinghan's fiery eyes. She said in a panic, "I can give you many privileges. I can help your strength soar, and I can give you many treasures. In my eyes, I'm not even interested in being the head of a mansion at this moment. If I can't get a kiss from you, then please kill me." Yi Qinghan rudely interrupted Concubine Land's words and then continued to press toward her. Step by step, the rustling sound of his footsteps rang out in the room. It was like the strange footsteps of a Qiongqi beast that shook the heavens, hitting Concubine Land's heart heavily. Concubine Lan took a step back subconsciously, but a light blue airflow appeared in her hand again. But when she saw the bright red at the corner of Yi Qinghan's mouth, and saw the fearless light in Yi Qinghan's eyes, her heart sank. Her heart trembled, and she took another step back. Sha sha sha. As Yi Qinghan took a step forward, Concubine Lan took a step back. The sound of 2 footsteps rang out, which was extremely abrupt and strange in the quiet room. Oh! Concubine Lan's back trembled. Unknowingly, she had already retreated to the wall of the room. Just as she was about to retreat to the side, a strong hand suddenly reached over and held her waist tightly. She subconsciously looked down, then suddenly woke up with a start and raised her head abruptly. Then, she felt two pairs of fiery lips clamping onto hers. A nimble and powerful tongue entered her slightly parted lips, and a sunny and masculine scent assaulted her senses. In an instant, there was a bang in her head, and she was completely confused after a long time. Their bodies separated, and their lips parted. These two flowery lips are really enchanting. Damn it, it's worth it to be hit by her. Looking at concubine Lan, who was still in a daze, Yi Qinghan felt great in his heart. His big hand felt her slender waist, which was surprisingly smooth, and he reluctantly withdrew it. He knew that he could not be too hasty when dealing with women, especially such a noble and mysterious woman. If he was too hasty, he would not be able to take advantage of her, but he would be burned. Sure enough, concubine Lan came to her senses in an instant. She flew into a rage out of humiliation and threw a hard slap at him. This time, the strength was a little stronger than the last time. Yi Qinghan flew backward in the air. He could clearly hear the sound of countless ribs breaking in his chest, and blood sprayed in the air. Humph, 9527. You've gone too far. Just wait to be killed by me. Concubine Lan left a fierce threat and disappeared directly from the room, leaving Yi Qinghan, who was lying on the ground, groaning in pain. Damn it, if I don't let you blow on me, I swear I'm not a human being. Yi Qinghan's face was twisted in pain. He hurriedly took out the soul ring from his space ring and began to heal his wounds with the help of the divine crystal. This time, he spent 3 days recuperating. During these days, Yi Qinghan had been constantly testing and experimenting with his strange soul. However, he did not find anything strange. The souls were still floating quietly in his mind, like two lakes. The black line was still connecting the two souls like a bridge. Damn it, I don't care. Anyway, it's not a bad thing for me at the moment. On the contrary, it's a great thing. I'll think about it when something really happens. At worst, I'll die. Yi Qinghan's IQ spirit was activated again. He would not think about things that he could not figure out. One soul had become two. For him, not only did he not find any disadvantages at the moment, but it was also a great benefit. That was one of his souls could constantly cultivate, which meant that he could cultivate at all times. He could even cultivate when he was fighting or having sex in the bedroom. If the other soul also participated in the cultivation, it would be equivalent to two souls comprehending. Of course, 1 + 1 wasn't as simple as 2. The speed at which he comprehended the laws would be much faster. Most importantly, his two souls could constantly verify with each other. This way, the speed of his deductions would be greatly increased. With this abnormal soul, Yi Qinghan believed that the speed at which he comprehended the laws could be increased by more than 3 times. This was much better than when he was in the Dream Palace. Why isn't concubine Lan showing up? Yi Qinghan touched his nose and smiled awkwardly. He subconsciously licked his lips at the thought of her tender and beautiful lips. Concubine Lan knew too much about him, and his slaughter god blade was still with her. As long as he did not take this woman down, he would not be at ease. In the past, he did not like to conquer a woman by force. He liked it when the conditions were right, and when the two of them had feelings for each other, they would get married. However, he had no other choice now. 3 days ago, he had risked his life to kiss concubine Lan forcefully in order to seize the initiative. Once a seed was planted in concubine Lan's mind, this seed could be continuously watered and fertilized until it finally grew strong and healthy. After his injuries were healed, Yi Qinghan became idle. Although concubine Lan could easily enter and exit the wall, he could not. Out of boredom, he began to cultivate. However, although he had comprehended all the profound mysteries of the laws to the phenomenal stage, he had no clue how to fuse the laws. Yi Qinghan thought about it and realized that only the soul-quieting technique could be cultivated. Thinking of the soul-quieting technique, Yi Qinghan had a headache. This **T technique was too difficult to cultivate. As he cultivated, he would often get distracted and fail on the verge of success. Wait. Suddenly, Yi Qinghan seemed to have thought of something, and his eyes suddenly lit up. Then, they became brighter and brighter, until they were even brighter than the gems on the ceiling of the room. Damn it, why didn't I think of that? This time, I've struck it rich. Abruptly, Yi Qinghan smacked his head with his hand, but he grinned. Just now, he suddenly realized that the difficulty of cultivating the great art of soul quietude was that he would often be distracted as he cultivated. But it was different now. He had two souls. One soul could cultivate, and the other could be distracted. In this way, this extremely difficult cultivation would become easy, wouldn't it? As long as he could successfully cultivate the soul quieting technique, he would be able to enter the state of soul quieting on his own initiative. In addition, the cultivation speed of his two souls was already 3 times faster. Now it could be more than 5 times faster. In other words, his cultivation speed could soar infinitely. Gulp! Yi Qinghan swallowed a few mouthfuls of saliva. His bright eyes seemed to be able to see a golden path sweeping towards him. Chapter 681. Just do it. Yi Qinghan had always done things swiftly and decisively. He would do whatever he thought of immediately. He sent a voice transmission to Xiaohei, asking him not to disturb him. Then, he calmed down and began to meditate. One of the souls began to recall the scene of entering soul silence, while the other soul began to indulge in flights of fancy. He thought of that beautiful night on the tranquil lake island, when Yu Qingqing flew out of the northern court like a flower fairy. He thought of the yellow sand on the god-slaying mountain and the entanglement between Yu Qingqing and the chilling heart pavilion. However, he was still not proficient in using the two souls. Occasionally, they would affect each other and become a little chaotic. But he was not discouraged. After every moment of chaos, he would stop cultivating and calm himself down for a period of time before resuming his cultivation. After a few rounds of cultivation, he became more and more experienced and began to familiarize himself with the use of the two souls. He focused all his attention on the cultivation of the soul silence technique. Phew, almost just a little more, and I will be able to comprehend it in 1 round. It's possible. I will definitely succeed. Several hours later, Yi Qinghan opened his eyes and laughed heartily. His expression was unusually excited. He did not sigh for too long, and then closed his eyes to cultivate. F***CK, their second master. I finally succeeded. I've finally completed 1 round of cultivation. Since I can succeed 1 round, I can succeed 2 rounds. The 3rd level of the soul silence technique won't be too far away. 3 hours later, Yi Qinghan opened his eyes again. He clenched his fists and waved them in the air. His eyes and brows were full of ecstasy. In just 6 hours, he had successfully recalled the scene 10,000 times and entered the soul silence state. He was right. This matter could really be done, and it would be done so easily. When Yi Qinghan was about to continue cultivating in one go, a faint snort sounded in the room. Yi Qinghan did not dare to continue cultivating, nor did he dare to think about cultivation and the soul. He narrowed his eyes slightly and looked at the wall on the left with a smile. Concubine Lan's figure emerged from the wall faintly. Her face was no longer gloomy. Instead, she had regained her indifferent and elegant expression, as if nothing could move her. "Hello, Miss Lan." Miss Lan seems to have become more beautiful today. However, the next second, Yi Qinghan's teasing made Concubine Lan's indifferent expression change slightly. Of course, she wouldn't be moved by Yi Qinghan's flattery, but because she heard the special meaning in Yi Qinghan's words. She heaved a sigh of relief and told herself to calm down. She did not want to kill this good seedling in front of her out of anger. If I were you, I wouldn't do something meaningless that would have serious consequences for myself. Concubine Lan sat leisurely on the table, poured herself a cup of tea, took a sip, and said lightly. Although Concubine Lan's words sounded like a tongue twister, Yi Qinghan could still clearly hear the threat in it. However, he didn't care. He went straight to the other end of the table and poured himself a cup of tea. However, he didn't drink it himself. Instead, he pushed it in front of Concubine Lan. In Concubine Lan's surprised eyes, he said with some shame, "Drink this cup." I just used that cup." Puff. Concubine Lan spat out a mouthful of tea and hurriedly wiped it. Her heart was in a mess again. She thought to herself, "What's wrong with me? Why did I completely lose my composure when I met this young man? How could I casually drink tea from this cup? Isn't this equivalent to kissing this young man indirectly?" Calm down. Blue Rain, you must calm down. This young man is a genius. Maybe he can be of great use. You can't kill him. Concubine Lan kept persuading herself in her heart, telling herself not to be impulsive. However, when she turned her head and saw Yi Qinghan's teasing eyes and the evil smile at the corner of his mouth, the suppressed killing intent in her heart surged again. "Well, Miss Concubine Lan, calm down. I didn't mean to offend you. Let's get down to business." Seeing Concubine Lan's angry eyes, Yi Qinghan stopped smiling at the right time. Instead, his face became extremely serious, and he said to Concubine Lan solemnly, "Humph, say it." Concubine Lan snorted coldly and put the cup in her hand heavily on the table. Then, she took the cup of tea handed over by Yi Qinghan and sipped it, as if she wanted to hide her embarrassment by drinking tea. "Miss Concubine Lan, I have a question. This question has been lingering in my mind for a few days. It makes me sleepless at night and tasteless. I wonder if Miss Concubine Lan can answer it for me." Yi Qinghan is very grateful. Yi Qinghan nodded, but he frowned slightly. It seemed that this question was really important. "Say it." Concubine Lan gave a word stingily again, but there was a little curiosity in her eyes. It was rare for Yi Qinghan to be so serious. What kind of question would he ask her? Yi Qinghan took a deep breath. Then, with deep affection in his eyes, he stared at Concubine Lan and said very seriously, "What I want to ask is, I don't know how to win your heart. Miss Concubine Lan, you don't know this, but ever since I saw you for the first time, I was deeply attracted by your beauty and that temperament that was like the brightest star in the night sky. It made me unable to extricate myself, and even my soul palpitated." Bang! Unsurprisingly, a beautiful palm responded to Yi Qinghan's words. This palm even directly smashed the table into powder and broke Yi Qinghan's ribs, which had just been repaired. This time, Yi Qinghan felt that all his internal organs had been shattered. "You have the right to refuse, but I have the right to pursue love. Even if you kill me, you can't change the sincerity in my heart that I love you." Yi Qinghan wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. Like a stubborn child, he raised his head with difficulty and looked at Concubine Lan. His eyes were full of pain and persistence. "Don't try to fool little girls like that. And I can tell you clearly that in this forgotten land, countless people have fallen in love with me, but they are all dead." Concubine Lan's tone was very indifferent, but the bright red on her face showed that Yi Qinghan's performance was still effective. Looking at Yi Qinghan, who was struggling to stand up, she was a little confused. Why did she always get angry so easily in front of this little man? Yi Qinghan struggled to stand up, leaned against the wall, lowered his head, and became a little lonely. He let out a long sigh, raised his head slightly, looked up at Concubine Lan at a 45-degree angle, and said faintly, "It's a blessing to be killed by Miss Concubine Lan. If I can't win your heart, Yi Qinghan would rather die." "You." Concubine Lan was completely at wit's end. Last time, because of these words, she was kissed by him secretly. She was stunned as she gazed at that handsome and delicate face covered in blood, yet her eyes flickered. After a short while, she seemed to have thought of something, and a wisp of a smile suddenly appeared on her face as she said, "All right, since you want me, then this young miss will give you this opportunity. As long as you can meet my requirements, Blue Rain will give itself to you." Yi Qinghan was stunned, but after a moment he asked in surprise, "What conditions?" "Climb to the top of the 5 Emperors Mountain." Concubine Lan's eyes lit up, and she smiled faintly. Chapter 682. The top of the 5 Emperors Mountain? It was the first time that Yi Qinghan had heard of this strange place. He raised his eyebrows in confusion and looked at Concubine Lan. The 5 Emperors Mountain is a mountain in the center of the Forgotten Land. This mountain is a bit strange. Without a certain level of strength, it's difficult to reach the top. If you can reach the top, I'll be yours for the rest of my life. What do you think? Do you dare to challenge me? Concubine Lan chuckled. Her beautiful eyes were full of provocation. Is there any fatal danger? Yi Qinghan directly ignored Concubine Lan's provocation and asked. Concubine Lan said straightforwardly, the Five Emperors Mountain itself is not dangerous. Of course, there are often warriors and high-level demonic beasts cultivating in it. Under normal circumstances, they won't take the initiative to attack you. If you get into a dispute with someone and get killed, it doesn't count. Deal? Yi Qinghan also said straightforwardly. Although he knew that this mountain was definitely strange, he knew that if he did not agree to Concubine Lan's request, he would never be able to conquer her. If he did not conquer her, he would never be able to feel at ease for the rest of his life. He could only grit his teeth and agree. A word from a monarch. A promise cannot be taken back. They looked at each other, narrowed their eyes, and chuckled. Both of them had ulterior motives and laughed like two cunning foxes. Concubine Lan laughed for a moment and said leisurely, there is a small teleportation device in the central hall on the second floor. You can be teleported to the Five Emperors Mountain at any time. What I can tell you is that you can go to the #1 practice room to cultivate at any time. Every month, you can go to Wu Mountain to get a holy fruit. The Five Emperors Mountain is like a pile of 5 mountains. If you can climb to the second mountain, I will send you to the 3rd floor. If you can climb to the 3rd mountain, you can go to the 4th floor. If you can climb to the 4th mountain, congratulations, you can be met by the Rain Emperor. She will satisfy any reasonable request of yours. So, work hard, little man. I'm looking forward to your performance. Hiss, Yi Qinghan gasped. He knew that it was difficult to climb to the Five Emperors Mountain, but he did not expect it to be so difficult. At this moment, he felt that he had to suffer in silence. If he could climb to the 4th mountain, he could be summoned by the Rain Emperor and get a promise from her. One could imagine how difficult it was to climb to the 4th mountain. Now, he obviously wanted to climb to the 5th mountain. Giggle. Concubine Lan was very satisfied with Yi Qinghan's expression. It seemed that she was very happy to see Yi Qinghan being defeated. She smiled sweetly and said, pack up your things. I've arranged a room for you. You can't live here anymore. Why? I think this place is not bad. Moreover, there is a faint fragrance in this room. I like it very much. Yi Qinghan was surprised and asked. Hearing Yi Qinghan's unintentional words, a faint flush appeared on Concubine Lan's face. This room had always been her boudoir. That day, because she was worried about Yi Qinghan's condition, she had rashly brought him here. She was clear that there was no perfume in the room. This fragrance naturally came from her body. Thinking up to here, she felt as if she had been taken advantage of by Yi Qinghan again. She glared at Yi Qinghan angrily and said, there's no why. I can't stay here just because I can't. Are you going or not? If you don't leave, I'll throw you out. Ha! It was the first time that Yi Qinghan had seen Concubine Lan acting like a little girl. He was in a very good mood and teased her. Why are you so fierce? If you want to leave, just leave. I really don't understand. Anyway, you've lived here for so many days. What's the matter if you sleep on the bed or sleep with me? Humph. Hearing this, Concubine Lan's face changed instantly. Light blue airflow came out of her hands. It seemed that she was about to lose her temper again. Fine, Miss Concubine Lan, calm down. If you slap me again, I'm afraid I won't be able to leave even if I want to. Yi Qinghan quickly raised his hands to beg for mercy. His injury had just recovered a little. If he was slapped again, he would definitely have to lie in bed for 10 days or half a month. He twisted his body with difficulty and put his armor into the space ring. Then he turned his head, pretended to be indifferent, and said to Concubine Lan, Miss Concubine Lan, do I have something with you? Humph. Of course. Concubine Lan knew what Yi Qinghan was asking. With a flip of her hand, a long black knife appeared in her hand. She threw it directly to Yi Qinghan and said disdainfully, I originally wanted to keep this knife for you. Since you want to take it, just take it. I don't care about it. However, I still want to give you a piece of advice. This knife is very precious. Don't show it to others easily. Thank you for your reminder, miss. Yi Qinghan didn't dare to take the knife. With a wave of his hand, he put it into the space ring and breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, concubine Lon didn't covet the slaughter god knife. If she insisted that she didn't take it, he couldn't do anything about it. However, he was even more curious about this mysterious concubine Lon. It was obvious that she could see that the slaughter god knife was extraordinary, but why didn't she covet it at all? After packing up, Yi Qinghan moved his feet with difficulty and followed concubine Lon to the wall. This time, he didn't get bounced back by the white light on the wall like before. Instead, he went through it directly and appeared in the small hall. In the small hall, Wu Shan was waiting respectfully. When he suddenly saw Yi Qinghan behind concubine Lon, his eyes revealed a look of surprise. However, he was not surprised for long. He respectfully lowered his head and bowed to concubine Lon. Arrange 9527 to stay in room 1. All the places on the second floor are open to him at any time. First-class treatment. Take him out. Concubine Lon sat in her armchair and said a few words lightly. Then, she lowered her eyes and fell silent. Wu Shan's eyes suddenly widened as he looked at Yi Qinghan in disbelief. Arranging him to stay in room 1 was not a big deal. There were a few people on the second floor who enjoyed the same treatment. However, all the places on the second floor were open to him at any time. This was not only unprecedented, but it also violated the rules of UD Mountain. 9527 had disappeared for more than a year. Not only did he not die, but he also enjoyed such treatment as soon as he came out. How could he not be shocked? Yes, sir. Wu Shan looked at concubine Lon, who was silent. He did not hesitate for too long. Concubine Lon had violated the rules of UD Mountain many times, so she did not care about this one. He walked over and supported Yi Qinghan to walk out. His eyes flickered as he thought, what is the relationship between 9527 and concubine Lon? Have they already slept together? It seems that it's good to have a delicate face. Seeing Wu Shan's shocked eyes, Yi Qinghan knew that this treatment must be unprecedented, so he became extremely happy. He followed Wu Shan out. When he reached the door, he looked back and happened to meet concubine Lan's eyes. He smiled coolly, flipped his hair, and sent a voice transmission to her. Woman, wash yourself clean and wait for me to pamper you. After sending the voice transmission, he no longer cared about concubine Lan's pretty face, which had instantly turned livid. He turned around and walked out with Wu Shan. The two of them turned into a long corridor and walked forward. Along the way, they met many warriors on the second floor, but they all looked shocked. The expression in their eyes was obvious. Who is this person? How can he be supported by Sir Wu Shan? After turning several long corridors, they finally came to the end of a long corridor. Wu Shan clapped on a mechanism next to a stone door and walked in with Yi Qinghan. With a flash of white light, Yi Qinghan looked around curiously. After a glance, his eyes suddenly widened, and he could not come to his senses for a long time. Chapter 683. The room was very large, twice as large as concubine Lan's small hall. The decoration and furnishings of the room were even more luxurious than those of the carefree pavilion. It looked like a hall with 3 rooms on both sides. Oh my, is this first-class treatment? Room number 1? It's really extraordinary. Yi Qinghan was secretly surprised, but he instantly regained his composure. After all, he had seen the luxury of the carefree pavilion and the magic of the dream palace, so it was not too strange. Moreover, he did not care much about this kind of luxurious enjoyment. However, in Wu Shan's eyes, his calm demeanor was a completely different story. This guy not only broke the record of the Forgotten Land with 15 consecutive victories, but also seemed to have a special relationship with concubine Lon. Now, in the face of such a luxurious palace, he was only slightly stunned for a while. This guy was not ordinary. Little brother, how should I address you? The more he thought about it, the more he felt that this guy was extraordinary. Wu Shan's attitude became more friendly. At this moment, it was certainly not appropriate to call him 9527. Brother Wu Shan, you're too polite. My name is Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan sensed Wu Shan's intimacy and heard him address her affectionately. She tactfully followed his lead. "Ah, little brother Yi, you're injured. Take care of yourself first. If you need anything, you can come to me. I live in room number 10. Yi Qinghan's understanding caused Wu Shan's smile to become even more radiant. He helped Yi Qinghan to the armchair and sat her down. After saying a few polite words, he took his leave. "Xiaohei, come out and have a look at our new home." As soon as Wu Shan left, Yi Qinghan directly waved a wave of qi and hit the mechanism of the door. The thick stone door immediately lit up with a faint light. After turning on the shield, he summoned Xiaohei and let him play in the room. Then he began to run his qi to heal himself. Concubine Land Slap just now was very gentle, but it was much more powerful than the last time. If it weren't for the soul ring secretly healing him, it would have been very difficult for him to get out. Thinking of the second bet with Concubine Lan, Yi Qinghan thought viciously, "I must find a way to climb the 5 Emperors Mountain, make her submit to me, and whip her for 10 days and 10 nights. Of course, I must use candles and whips." The news of Yi Qinghan staying in room number 1 spread to the ears of most of the martial artists on the second floor not long after. While everyone was shocked, they began to inquire about Yi Qinghan's detailed information. This was the descendant of the genius who had fought 15 consecutive battles without dying. The crowd was no longer surprised. Even though this person was only a first-layer divine general, he had reached a height that even the new Thunder Emperor could not reach. Who would dare to look down on him? After 3 days, Yi Qinghan walked out of room number 1 and went straight into room number 1. However, he didn't come out again. The crowd's originally calm hearts were in turmoil again. Room number 1 was extremely magical. There were traces of the Rain Emperor practicing in it, and there was a small spirit gathering formation in it. The divine qi inside was several times denser than on the second floor. It was much faster to practice and comprehend in there than outside. Most of the martial artists on the second floor could only cultivate 1 day a month, and it was a fixed time. This was a rule set by the Rain Emperor himself. Only by meeting certain requirements could they have 1 or 2 more days a month. However, this person could go in and out at will, and it seemed like he wasn't going to come out. The first thought that came to everyone's mind was that Concubine Lan was too bold. If this matter reached the ears of the Rain Emperor, even if she had someone backing her up, she wouldn't be able to protect her. The second thought was, did this person have something going on with Concubine Lan? Otherwise, why would Concubine Lan treat him so well? Gigolos were still popular nowadays. Yi Qinghan didn't care what others thought. He was very busy now. He was busy letting his imagination run wild and cultivating the soul-quieting technique. His soul had become 2, and he could suddenly cultivate the soul-quieting technique easily. While Yi Qinghan was pleasantly surprised, he thought that he should quickly cultivate this technique. If his soul mutated again, wouldn't he make a profit? Divine Realm, Misty Continent. The Ascension platform seemed to be particularly lively today. Martial artists were continuously teleported up from the material plane. A large group of martial artists had just been sent away, and now several martial artists were teleported in at the same time. There are actually 3 divine General Realm martial artists? The 2 silver-haired and silver-eyed tall men guarding the Ascension platform raised their eyebrows. It was very rare for 6 martial artists to be teleported in at once. This time, there were actually 3 divine General Realm martial artists, which was even more strange. However, both of them were Divine King Realm experts, so they could easily tell with a glance. Among these 6 martial artists, 5 of them had refined divine crystals. The 2 of them retracted their astonished gazes, and even revealed faint disdain on their faces. They thought that these were definitely relatives of the lords of some material plane. Martial artists who refined divine crystals to break through had a very low status in the divine realm. This was because those martial artists who had painstakingly comprehended and broke through instinctively looked down on these martial artists who took shortcuts to break through. Haha, the divine realm is indeed different. The heaven and earth essence energy is so dense that even the air here feels comfortable. Yi Qingyo looked at the magnificent scenery around him and sensed the ancient desolation in the air, which made one's skin unconsciously feel happy. He laughed comfortably and said to the Lord of Hidden Island and the Saber Emperor, who were beside him. Saber Emperor and Hidden Island Lord smiled embarrassedly, but they looked at the two huge martial artists beside the teleportation formation with some fear. Yi Qingyo had a straightforward and carefree temperament, so they naturally wouldn't be so rash. After all, this wasn't their territory. Meanwhile, Yi Qingyu, Yu Qingsheng, and Yi Qingwu looked around, feeling slightly excited. In their hearts, they were thinking that Yi Qinghan must have also been teleported here. However, there were 6 of them, while Yi Qinghan was alone. Thinking of this, all sorts of feelings welled up in the 3 of them, and their eyes became misty. Shut up. Get lost. If you keep shouting, I'll kill all of you. Get lost. Hearing Yi Qingyo's loud laughter, the expressions of the 2 silver-haired martial artists turned cold. One of the martial artists' cold aura instantly enveloped the entire ascension platform, and the 2 of them shouted coldly at the others. Did these trash really think that the divine realm was their material plane? Was this a place where they could shout and yell? And Yi Qingyo's eyes suddenly bulged, and the expressions of the people beside him also changed. How many years had it been since anyone had spoken to them so rudely? Telling them to get lost was one thing, but they actually said that they would kill them? Yi Qingyo almost went berserk. However, it was clear that these people weren't fools. Saber Emperor's gaze became even colder as he looked at the huge man, and he hurriedly transmitted a message to Yi Qingyo, telling him not to act rashly. Not to mention that they were unfamiliar with this place. Even these 2 experts weren't people they could deal with. My lord, the Island Lord of Hidden Island took a step forward, took out a pink token from his spatial ring, and said to the 2 huge men, "Can you teleport me to Rain Butterfly Island?" When the 2 experts saw Yi Qingyo's expression, their expressions became even colder. They originally wanted to teach these country bumpkins who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth a lesson. Seeing this token, a trace of astonishment flashed in their eyes. One of the huge men opened his hand, took the token, and examined it. Only then did he nod at the other expert. The expressions of the 2 experts instantly changed. The gloominess on their faces disappeared, and a smile appeared on their faces. The speed at which their expressions changed was breathtaking. They said very politely, "This is indeed the token of the Rain Butterfly Island. Everyone can teleport to the Rain Butterfly Island." The Rain Butterfly clan was one of the most ancient and powerful clans in the Divine Realm. Their king was a famous supreme expert in the Divine Realm. How could 2 insignificant god kings like them dare to offend them? The token of the Rain Butterfly clan wouldn't be given out carelessly. These country bumpkins who looked like trash were actually related to the Rain Butterfly clan. They naturally didn't dare to be disrespectful. Chapter 684. They won't go to the Rain Butterfly Island. Old friends, long time no see. At this time, the teleportation array on the left suddenly lit up. With a flash of white light, a woman in white suddenly appeared in the teleportation array. What terrified the 2 silver-haired men was that the lady was holding a black token in her hand. When the 2 of them saw the black token, they immediately stood up in fear. Then, they quickly knelt on one knee and cried out in a deep voice, "We pay our respects to my lord." The woman was dressed in white and looked very beautiful. She had a faint smile on her face, and her whole body exuded an elegant temperament. The token was black and seemed to be made of a very special material. The word misty was engraved on it in flamboyant calligraphy. The 2 guards knelt on the ground in incomparable fear. At this moment, they wished they could slap themselves. Never in their wildest dreams would they have imagined that this group of trash who basically refined divine crystals, this group of small martial artists who looked no different from country bumpkins, actually had such a great background. It was fine if they were related to the Rain Butterfly clan, but unexpectedly, they were related to the Misty City. The Misty City represented the will of the Misty Sovereign. On the Misty Continent, the will of the Misty Sovereign couldn't be defied. Just now, they had actually cursed the guests of the Misty City and arrogantly said that they would kill them. Thinking of this, the two guards' hearts trembled slightly. Any random person from the floating city could easily kill the two of them with just a single word. You are? The six people looked at the two guards who had been arrogant a moment ago and now knelt on the ground in incomparable fear. They blinked their eyes, not understanding what had happened. Finally, the six people locked their eyes on the woman in white. But no matter how they looked, they couldn't remember who she was. Old friends? Since when did they have such an awesome old friend? We haven't seen each other for more than 10 years. Don't you recognize me? Island Lord, Saber Emperor, Yi Qingyo, Yu Qingcheng, Yi Qingwu, Yi Qingyu. I remember each and every one of you very clearly. The woman smiled and looked at them one by one, calling out in a very friendly and familiar manner. You are Madame Jiao? Yu Qingcheng was the first to react. Because Madame Jiao had once saved her life from the Golden Horn clan, and she had also stayed on the Purple Island for a period of time. But she still asked with uncertainty. Little Qingcheng became a deity in such a short period of time. She is truly a heaven-defying genius. The person who came was Nine-Tailed Fox. After transforming into a human, her appearance was naturally different. Even her voice had changed slightly after more than a decade. It was no wonder that no one could tell. The rest of the people came to their senses and hurriedly bowed. Greetings, Ninth Lord. All right, let's chat later. We'll take you to Soul Eater City first. My lord is waiting for you in the city. Nine-Tailed Fox. She had been in the immortal world for so many years, and this was the first time she had seen an acquaintance from the Flame Dragon continent. She was in a good mood, and her eyes were full of smiles. However, she saw that the Hidden Island Lord's expression was a bit awkward and conflicted. She rolled her eyes and knew what he was thinking. She chuckled and said, "Of course, if the Island Lord is worried about young Lady Ling, you can also go to the Rain Butterfly Island to take a look. Young Lady Ling has now become the princess of the Rain Butterfly clan. I'm sure she will be very happy to see you. Furthermore, there is a teleportation array on the island. If you want to find us in the future, you can directly teleport to Soul Eater City." Yeah, guys, I'm really worried about my adopted granddaughter. How about I go there first? Then I'll find you guys later. The Hidden Island Lord was a little ashamed as he looked at them. However, they didn't mind it too much. Anyway, they all knew that the reason why he had come to the immortal world was to worry about Ling. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and teleport. After the discussion was done, Nine-Tailed Fox turned around and looked at the two God King realm guards. Although her tone was faint, it had an invisible pressure. She had followed Lord Devour to the immortal world for so many years, and she had seen many big scenes. Of course, she didn't care about these two little God King realm guards. The teleportation array was divided into two parts. First, the Hidden Island Lord would be teleported to the Rain Butterfly Island, and then the others would be teleported to Soul Eater City. Watching the group of people disappear into the teleportation array, the two wiped the cold sweat on their faces and sighed. Not only did this group of country bumpkins have a relationship with the princess of the Rain Butterfly clan, but they also had a relationship with the Ethereal City and Soul Eater City. They were lucky that they weren't enraged. Otherwise, they didn't know if they could keep their lives. At the northernmost part of the Ethereal Mansion, by the Wandering Sea, stood a majestic city, Soul Eater City. The Soul Eater City was built by the sea, and half of the city was suspended above the sea. Standing in the northern part of the city, one could see the seawater constantly beating on the city's foundation. It wasn't a building that could be suspended above the water. It was half of the city. Because of the ebb and flow of the tide below, the crashing of the waves gave off a strange sound. This sound was very strange. It didn't have the mockery of the crashing of the waves. Instead, it sounded like a very pleasing sound, and it also had the effect of calming one's mind. At the same time, the entire city would have a faint mist rising from time to time, making the Soul Eater City look like an immortal palace with an immortal aura. The strange layout of the Soul Eater City was a marvel in the entire Misty continent, and it was even famous in the immortal world. Along with this city, there was also a beautiful legend. It was said that although the Soul Eater City was by the sea, it wasn't suspended in the air like this. Soul Eater City wasn't as big, beautiful, or magical as it was now, until the previous Soul Eater City Lord, the Soul Emperor, took over. His beloved wife said that the Soul Eater City wasn't beautiful enough, and the Soul Emperor spent trillions of divine stones and hundreds of years to rebuild the Soul Eater City into this for a woman. He rebuilt a city, spending trillions of divine stones. What kind of infatuation was that? What kind of courage was that? What kind of wealth was that? Regardless of whether the legend was true or not, the Soul Eater City was very famous now. Wong. At this moment, the largest teleportation formation in soul-devouring city's plaza lit up. The guards guarding the teleportation formation all tensed up. This was the largest teleportation formation, and usually only the 108 main cities of the ethereal mansion would use this teleportation formation. Could it be that some big shot had come? The rainbow light gradually dissipated, revealing a total of 6 men and women. The guards frowned in confusion. These people didn't seem to have a high cultivation level. How could they have the ability to use such a large teleportation formation? However, when they saw the white-clothed woman who walked out first, their confusion was no longer on their faces. Instead, they became incomparably respectful. "Greetings, Ninth Lady." Hundreds of people cupped their fists and shouted in unison. Many of them were God King experts. However, they all knew that although this woman was only at the first level of the divine general realm, she was one of the closest people to the mansion lord. Oh, Yi Qing, Niu, Yu Qingcheng, and the others exchanged looks, a trace of astonishment in their eyes. They could easily sense the incomparably powerful strength of these hundreds of people. But why were they so respectful to Ninth Lady? Combined with the scene on the Ascension platform, the 5 of them were shocked. This Lord Devourer was actually so awesome in the divine world. Chapter 685. His lordship is really strong. You'll know later. Let's go. Lord Gio turned to look at their faces, guessing what they were thinking. She sent a message to them and then walked forward. Swoosh! At this moment, an air-piercing sound came from the front, which caught people's attention. It wasn't their fault that they reacted so fast. It was because the person's entrance was too eye-catching that people couldn't help but notice. A celestial horse was flying fast from a distance. It was a divine steed with a pair of wings on its back, radiating soft divine light. Someone was riding on the horse, wearing white armor and holding a silver spear. He was so handsome that only one word could describe him. Wow! It's his lordship, King Yi. He's so handsome. I'm going to faint for a while. King Yi, I love you like a mouse loves rice. Along with King Yi's appearance, the entire square was filled with the sound of horns and countless infatuated girls confessing their love to him. King Yi didn't even give them a glance. His eyes were hot, gazing at Lord Gio. The heat in his eyes was enough to evaporate the wandering sea. Saber Emperor and Yi Qingyu exchanged looks, laughing. They had seen this person before. He had been to the Fire Dragon continent that year, and he had called Lord Devourer Big Sister. Yu Qingcheng and the other 2 looked at each other, their eyes filled with longing. Thinking back to the past, Yi Qinghan's pretentious manner was much more creative than this divine king's. Sigh this again? Nine-tailed Fox sighed reluctantly. As soon as she came to the divine world, King Yi had been pestering her. She knew clearly that King Yi was famous for being a playboy. Of course, she wouldn't be fooled. Fortunately, Lord Devourer was there to help her. However, whenever she saw King Yi's flashy way of courting, Nine-tailed Fox still felt a headache. Little plan, this King Yi has finally reached the peak of God King realm. I've been cultivating in seclusion for several years, but each day feels like a year to me. You don't know how hard it is to live without you. Princey waved his hand in the air. His body floated up, and he stepped on his horse, flying towards the crowd in a carefree manner. While he was in midair, he pulled out a bouquet of roses like a magic trick. His starry eyes looked at Lord Gio leisurely. Congratulations, Your Excellency, Princey. Well, there are a few guests in my hometown. Your Excellency is waiting to see them. I'll leave first, Your Excellency Prince E. Nine-tailed fox smiled bitterly and bowed to Prince E. She then quickly walked to the side. She couldn't afford to offend Prince E, so she could only avoid him. From your hometown? Isn't your hometown my eldest sister's hometown? Waha, we're on the same side. Ha, hello everyone. Come here, this way please. I'll lead the way for you. When Prince E saw Lord Gio running away, he wanted to chase after her. But when he heard Lord Gio's words, he found that there were 5 people standing beside her. When he glanced at them, he was stunned, especially when he saw Yu Qingqing's fairy-like temperament. He smiled eagerly. Lord Prince E, don't blame me for not reminding you. Don't try anything funny. These 3 are the wives of Lord Xiao Hei's eldest brother. If you want to be thrown into the sea and be confined for 1,000 years, you can flirt with them. Nine-tailed fox also realized that it was rude of her to run away subconsciously. She stopped in her tracks but saw that Prince E was staring at the 3 of them. She hurriedly reminded him through telepathy. Hearing Lord Gio's telepathy, the smile on Prince Yi's face suddenly froze. Who was Lord Xiao Hei? Although he had never seen him in person, he knew very well that he was the son of the Soul Emperor. Since he could become Xiao Hei's eldest brother and his stubborn eldest sister didn't object, he must be a very powerful person. His eldest sister had always been very respectful to the Soul Emperor. If she knew that he had any funny ideas about these 3 people, she would skin him alive. Nine-tailed fox hurriedly gave them a look and left Prince E, who was in a daze, to walk quickly into the castellan's residence. The 5 of them curiously sized up this majestic Soul Eater city. Finally, they followed Lord Gio in a daze and came to a huge castle. There were guards outside the door, but they didn't dare to say anything when they saw Lord Gio. They just bowed respectfully. The 6 of them walked inside and went straight up to the 6th floor. There was only one door on the 6th floor. After the 5 of them walked in, they didn't see the luxurious palace that they had imagined. Instead, they saw a rooftop. Saber Emperor looked at the scenery in front of him and felt a sense of familiarity. The layout of this rooftop was exactly the same as the layout of the Dark Castle. The same countless fresh flowers, the same grape trellis full of lush green grapes, the same red figure sitting under the grape trellis with his back facing everyone, quietly reading a book. If it wasn't for the magnificent wandering sea, Saber Emperor would have thought that he had come to the rooftop of the Dark Castle. Greetings, Lord. After the 6 of them had saluted, the red figure stood up and turned around, revealing the familiar face of Lord Devour. However, Lord Devour used to be cold, but this time it was the first time he smiled warmly at them. Welcome to the divine world. Although there was only a faint smile on Lord Devour's face, people felt warm in their hearts. Yu Qingsheng, Yi Qingwu, and Yi Qingyu felt like they had found their elders. Tears rolled down their cheeks. Then they kneeled down in front of Lord Devour. They didn't say anything, just kowtowing to him. After kowtowing 9 times, they lifted their heads, their eyes sparkling with tears as they quietly looked at Lord Devour. Lord, Yi Qingyo and Saber Emperor also looked at Lord Devour nervously. Their faces were so solemn as they looked at Lord Devour. Get up, Lord Devour said faintly. He swung his hand, and a milky white airflow emerged from the 3 women's legs, lifting them up. He knew what they were asking for. Yi Qingyo and Saber Emperor were waiting for something. After a while of silence, they said, I know where Yi Qinghan is. But you can't see him now. The eyes of the 5 of them brightened. They knew where Yi Qinghan was? Did it mean that Yi Qinghan was all right? As long as he was all right, it was good. The 3 women exhaled in relief. However, recalling the inexplicable palpitation they had in the chilling heart pavilion, and hearing that they couldn't see him now, they were worried. Yu Qingqing bowed to him and asked, Lord, can you tell us where Qinghan is? If it's not convenient for you, we can find him alone. You can't find him. The divine world is so vast. With your low competence, I'm sure you'll die within 2 hours after you leave the soul-devouring city. I won't tell you where Yi Qinghan is, but I can assure you that he's still alive. The only thing you can do is to cultivate and become stronger. Then you can help Yi Qinghan. Lord Devour's voice was still faint, but it was so sure that no one would doubt him. Phew, hearing Lord Devour's absolute guarantee, they exhaled in relief. A character like Lord Devour, of course, wouldn't tell lies. However, Madame Jiao was skeptical. Yi Qinghan had fallen into the sealed God Valley, which was an isolated world. How could Lord Devour know that Yi Qinghan was still alive? Was her supernatural power strong enough to predict the heavens' will? Lord, how long do we need to wait? Yu Qingqing pondered for a while, then asked stubbornly. How long? Lord Devour squinted, looking at the vast sea far from them. Then he turned to Yu Qingqing and said, Wait until your divine sound law reaches the God Emperor realm. At that time, Yi Qinghan will come back. Chapter 686. God Emperor Realm. The five dropped their jaws. After confirming that Lord Devour wasn't joking, their faces turned bitter. God Emperor Realm. Yu Qingqing was at the first heavenly god realm. It was hard to say if she could reach the God General realm or the King God realm. Lord Devour asked for God Emperor realm. Even if Yu Qingqing could reach the God Emperor realm, how many years would it take? 100,000 years? 1,000,000 years? Lord, please. Yi Qingyu was hurried. She wanted to kneel down to beg Lord Devour one more time. However, before she could do that, an invisible flow of air covered her body. Lord Devour turned around and sat down, waving his hand. Don't play this trick with me. You guys can find it yourselves, or you can stay in the castle. If you want to find it yourselves, I won't give you any help. That's it. Ajio, take them away. Thank you, Lord. We're leaving now. As they saw Lord Devour being so cold and overbearing, they didn't say anything else. No matter what, Lord Devour didn't owe them anything. On the contrary, she had asked Madame Jiao to bring them here, which was already a big favor. The five of them could only sigh, exchanging looks. They decided to stay in the soul-devouring city to investigate the God world first. Then they would decide what to do next. Madame Jiao received Lord Devour's secret message. She arranged for the five of them to stay on the fourth floor of the city master palace and gave each of them a token, which allowed them to move freely in the city master palace. After arranging the five of them, Madame Jiao walked to the rooftop alone. She bowed to Lord Devour, but didn't say anything. She stood quietly behind her, her eyes complicated. From time to time, she glanced at Lord Devour's back. Ajio, don't hold it in. If you have something to say, ask. Lord Devour found it funny and annoying at the same time. He turned to look at Lord Devour. Ajio, why did you ask them to come to the God world? Madame Jiao smiled embarrassedly. She didn't evade, asking directly. Madame Jiao understood the three women's feelings for Yi Qinghan. It was okay in the Fire Dragon continent. Without any definite news, they wouldn't act rashly. If they were to find out about Yi Qinghan's situation, the three of them would probably jump down the sealed God Valley without any hesitation. Moreover, if Lord Devour hadn't arranged for him to pick them up in time, it was hard to say whether they could survive in the divine world. In this world, there are a few kinds of people who are very powerful. For example, a filial son who recognizes the murderer as his father when his family is killed, and a crazy woman who has lost her mind because of love. The three of them belong to the second type. Lord Devour took a sip of tea and didn't answer Nine-Tailed Fox's question. Instead, he smiled faintly and turned to look at the wandering sea. After a while, he continued, Yi Qingwu and Yi Qingyu aren't talented enough. That's why they haven't achieved much in their lives. However, Yu Qingqing is different. At such a young age, she managed to cultivate to the deity level through some fortuitous encounter. Most importantly, she has comprehended the law of divine sound. Her talent can be said to be much stronger than Yi Qinghan's. Even in the immortal realm, she can be considered a peerless genius. So, I want to nurture her. Create? Nine-Tailed Fox nodded faintly. However, her brows furrowed even tighter. You want to nurture Yi Qinghan, but in the end, you didn't even know whether he was alive or dead. And now, you want to nurture his wife. Lord Devour had told her that she had a formidable enemy. He wanted to nurture Yi Qinghan to help her. But now, it seemed that Yi Qinghan didn't have much hope of walking out alive. Lord Devour wanted to nurture Yu Qingsheng. She didn't understand. Lord Devour was so strong. Even she couldn't deal with his enemy. How could Yi Qinghan and Yu Qingsheng help him? Moreover, if he had an enemy, it was fine that he had hidden in the Fire Dragon continent. But now, Lord Devour had appeared in the divine world. Why didn't his enemy come to him? Lord, is what you told them true? Nine-tailed Fox pondered for a while, but she couldn't figure it out. She decided not to ask anymore, asking a vague question. What Lord Jia wanted to ask was, of course, the news that Lord Devour had told her that Yi Qinghan was still alive. She was skeptical. The God-Sealing Valley was a strange place. No matter how strong Lord Devour was, he wasn't an omnipotent God-Emperor. How could she be so sure? When have you ever seen me lie? It's not good for you to know too much. Go and tell the others. Don't care about the 5 of them. Except for their daily needs, don't give them even one divine stone. Let Yu Qingsheng die. Go and find Yi Qinghan's heart. You can leave now. Lord Devour coldly glared at her. Lord Jiu shivered inwardly. She knew that Lord Devour blamed her for doubting her. She didn't dare to say more, bowed to him, and left to arrange. Actually, Lord Jiu didn't need Lord Jiu's message. Many big characters in the soul-devouring city knew about Yu Qingsheng's group. The ones that Lord Jiu had to pick up weren't ordinary people. Although the door to the rooftop didn't have any mechanism, and they could enter by pushing it, not everyone could get in. Moreover, they had stayed on the rooftop for a long time. When they got down, they were arranged to stay on the 4th floor. It was really extraordinary. In the Palace Masters Challenge competition, Lord Devour had fought against several god emperors alone, including an 8th grade war god. Eventually, those people had left. However, Lord Devour was still sitting under the grape trellis, sipping his tea and reading a book in silence at the same time when the soul-devouring city was famous. The elders and the patriarchs of the families in the city were panic-stricken. Although they didn't know why, several thousand years ago, when the Soul Emperor had died, Lord Devour had only the competence of a 7th grade war god. Moreover, he was the weakest among all the 7th grade experts. How did he become so powerful in just a few thousand years after returning from a trip to his hometown? But it didn't affect their respect and fear for Lord Devour. Now, Lord Devour's people had come to his hometown, and they were the ones he valued the most. The big characters in the city had to pay attention to them, even though the 5 of them were trash who had refined divine crystals. However, before they could take action, Lord Jiu had brought Lord Devour's decree, which was strange and inexplicable. Yi Qingyou's group of 5 stayed on the 4th floor of the City Master's Palace, enjoying the super treatment that they had never dreamed of. When they entered the City Master's Palace, they were greeted with many respectful smiles. Even the high and mighty god emperors treated them with respect and politeness. However, after 1 month, the 5 of them became more and more helpless, colder and colder. In the city, every warrior treated them with respect, and they had also inquired about many things about the divine realm. The 5 of them hadn't passed the tribe's training, so they didn't have the divine realm badge. Moreover, it seemed that Lord Devour didn't want to give them any. In other words, if they left the soul-devouring city, they would be torn apart by the demonic beasts or killed by the guards in other cities. In other words, besides the soul-devouring city, they couldn't go anywhere. And when they asked about Yi Qinghan, the people in the city didn't know anything, and Lord Jiu didn't say a word. They didn't know what Lord Devour wanted, but they knew that besides following Lord Devour's order, they had no other choice. Lord, if I cultivate to the God Emperor realm, can you guarantee that Qinghan will come back? Yu Qingsheng gritted her teeth, walking to the rooftop and asking Lord Devour, I'm sure that when you break through to the God Emperor realm, you guys will see Yi Qinghan. Lord Devour said resolutely. Looking at the wandering sea, The corners of his mouth curled into a smile like a cunning old fox. "All right." Yu Qingqing also smiled, but her smile was a little bitter. Her peach-colored palace dress was fluttering in the sea breeze, and the tacky peach blossom on her head was also swaying in the wind. It reflected off the hundreds of flowers on the rooftop, and it actually looked so poignant and beautiful. Chapter 687. Compared to Yu Qingqing and the others, Yi Yaorao was in more pain. She knew that Yi Qinghan was in the nearby Rain Emperor Mountain, but she couldn't find him. Most importantly, ever since Yi Qinghan joined the 15th battle, there was no news about him. She was worried. She had thought of going to Rain Emperor Mountain, but the Forgotten Land was huge. She didn't know if she could reach Rain Emperor Mountain alive. Most importantly, Emperor God Xiaofeng had sent someone to watch over her. She wasn't afraid of death, but she couldn't die before she was sure if Yi Qinghan was alive. Hence, she had been holding on and hoping for a miracle. However, she felt her body getting weaker and weaker. She wasn't sure how long she could hold on. How is it? 1086. What do you think? A warrior walked into the cave. It wasn't Emperor God Xiaofeng, but the beautiful woman next to him. After Emperor God Xiaofeng was given the cold shoulder by Yi Yaorao, he, of course, wouldn't stick out his warm face to be snubbed. Instead, he took a roundabout approach and let the woman persuade Yi Yaorao. Yi Yaorao looked at the beautiful woman coldly and closed her eyes without saying a word. "Sister, why do you have to do this?" The beautiful woman saw Yi Yaorao's pale face and knew that she was holding on. Back then, she was so stubborn. However, she was so weak that she couldn't even open her eyes. When she smelled the aura of Netherworld, she came to her senses. She only had one life. If she died, she would have nothing. There were some things that would be fine as long as she let go. Living a good life was the truth, wasn't it? In the divine world, the strong preyed on the weak. As long as you were powerful enough, you could do anything you wanted. Wasn't suffering humiliation so that you could enjoy a better life in the future? At most, she could let a few hundred handsome young men lick her every day. Seeing that Yi Yaorao's eyes were still closed, the beautiful woman sighed again and persuaded, "Sister, I have been through this. Back then I insisted on my principles too. However, if you want to live a better life in this world and do something, you have to compromise. A temporary sacrifice is for the future." Yi Yaorao was also quietly sitting with her legs crossed. She seemed so weak that she had fallen asleep. "Sister, let me give you a good idea. Actually, you can be flexible. You can let the adults help you get to the second floor first. Just say that you need to think about it and slowly drag it out, right? Let's survive first. We can slowly think of a way later, right?" The bewitching woman did not seem to give up. She continued to quack like a duck and kept muttering in Yi Yaorao's ears. However, these words were transmitted to him in a rather mysterious manner. This method seemed to be helping Yi Yaorao, but she knew that once a woman compromised, they would continue to compromise. Since this was the first time, it didn't matter if he did it a few more times. As long as Yi Yaorao dared to accept his kindness, she would still obediently take off her skirt and raise her butt. When the beautiful woman saw that Yi Yaorao's eyes were still closed, she smiled bitterly and stood up to walk out. However, when she reached the entrance of the cave, she heard a cold voice. "I can consider it." The gorgeous woman's footsteps came to a halt as a smile appeared on her face. She sneered coldly in her heart. "Weren't you quite arrogant just now? Women, as long as you take a step back, you will have to take countless steps back." Although she despised her, she still put on a smile and assured Yi Yaorao. Then, she went to the second floor to report the good news to Emperor God Xiaofeng. Yi Yaorao opened her eyes with difficulty and revealed a cold smile. Of course, she was not compromising. Yi Qinghan had said that some principles should not be violated. However, the means could be changed. "Qinghan, where are you? Are you still alive? I can't hold on for long. If you appear again and I can't find you, I can only die first." Yi Yaorao sighed and closed her eyes. Yi Yaorao sighed softly and closed her eyes. She knew that the second floor would not be life-threatening for the time being. However, Emperor Godchiu Feng would definitely press on. Once he crossed the bottom line, she could only die. Of course, Yi Qinghan didn't know that his three wives had come to the divine world from the faraway Fire Dragon continent to look for him. He also didn't know that Yi Yaorao was struggling in the Forgotten Land. He only knew that he was going to be rich. His soul became two. So far, he didn't find any hidden dangers. Instead, he found great benefits. In just 1 month, he had successfully cultivated the soul-quieting technique to the 3rd level. If the soul cultivators in the divine world knew about this, they would be so shocked that their eyeballs would drop to the ground. The soul-quieting technique was the foundation of the soul cultivators. Without cultivating the soul-quieting technique, one's soul couldn't grow quickly. After reaching the Divine King realm, every increase in the soul level would require a soul that was dozens of times stronger than before. Without the soul-quieting technique, it would be harder to improve the soul to the 2nd level of the Divine King realm. The 2nd level to the 3rd level of the soul-quieting technique was the most difficult to cultivate. Many soul cultivators were stuck at the 2nd level for hundreds of thousands of years. Only when their minds were numb and they had no desires did they manage to enter the 3rd level. However, once they broke through the 3rd level, it was like a carp leaping over the dragon's gate. The 3rd level allowed one to enter the soul-quieting technique. Being passive and being active were two completely different concepts. Being passive was something that happened by chance. Perhaps one could enter it 2 or 3 times a month, or perhaps only once every several tens of thousands of years. But being active was different. Although one couldn't enter the 3rd level at any time, it was different if one could enter it once every 10 times. Entering this state, one's soul could continuously grow, and one's divine power could also slowly grow. The speed of comprehending laws was also several times faster. Therefore, soul cultivators normally wouldn't let their law realm cultivation speed up. Instead, they would accompany the growth of their soul while comprehending laws. When the soul was strong enough, the speed of comprehension and deduction would be several times faster. It would be much easier to raise one's law realm. Moreover, soul cultivators were used to using their souls to attack their enemies due to their powerful souls. Soul attacks were silent, unpredictable, and impossible to guard against. They had all tasted the power of soul attacks. Normally, they didn't like to use laws to attack, so they weren't particularly interested in cultivating laws. Holy shit, this feels great. With this soul-quieting technique and this freakish soul, reaching the Divine King realm is no longer a dream. Yi Qinghan revealed a brilliant smile. His eyes were also shining brightly. He was in an extremely good mood. These 2 freakish souls could increase his comprehension speed by 3 times, and the soul-quieting technique could increase it by 2 or 3 times. Furthermore, there was the Rain Emperor's cultivation diagram here. The speed at which he comprehended the laws was more than 10 times faster than others. Even if Yi Qinghan's innate talent was slow, under such good conditions, his speed at comprehending the laws would still skyrocket. Cultivate, cultivate. I have to reach the Divine King realm as soon as possible. Yi Qinghan didn't hesitate for long. His eyes shone brightly, and he locked onto the white wall opposite him. He started to comprehend the Rain Emperor's cultivation diagram. He was like a child, afraid that the freakish soul in his head would disappear. He first comprehended more laws at the fastest speed and raised his strength before anything else. Boss is so hardworking. I'm so bored. I'll cultivate too. Xiaohe lay at the side and slowly closed his eyes. He didn't know if it was because of Yi Qinghan's influence or because he was in this strange training room number 1, but he actually started cultivating obediently for the first time. Chapter 688. Yi Qinghan stayed in the number 1 training room for 3 months and didn't come out. When concubine Lan heard Wu Shan's report, she raised her eyebrows in surprise. She didn't expect that her subconscious action shocked Wu Shan even more. Concubine Lan had been the manager of the 2nd floor for so many years, but he had never seen her change her expression before. She was always indifferent, and even when she smiled, she seemed to be 1,000 miles away from people. He didn't expect that she would often lose her composure because of Yi Qinghan. This was the first time he had seen her raise her eyebrows in the tens of thousands of years he had known her. Yes, many members of the second floor expressed some doubts about this. Although Lord Long and I and the others didn't say anything, they also expressed some puzzlement. Although Wu Shan was shocked, he didn't show it on his face. However, he was more certain that the relationship between Yi Qinghan and concubine Lan was not ordinary. At the same time, he tactfully expressed some of his worries. He could ignore the captains of the second floor, but Long and I and the other experts could pass the message to the higher-ups. If it was passed to the Rain Emperor, it wouldn't be a fun matter. Doubts? Puzzlement? It's doubt and dissatisfaction. Concubine Lan sneered and waved her hand to let Wu Shan leave. She didn't even give him an explanation. She was extremely overbearing. Her attitude was very clear. If the warriors of the second floor wanted to make trouble, they could do it. If Long and I and the others wanted to pass the message, they could do it. She didn't even bother to explain. It was obvious that she disdained and connived with Yi Qinghan. Wu Shan left in silence, but he had more doubts in his heart. Who was behind concubine Lan? Could it be the Rain Emperor? After thinking about it, Wu Shan's heart trembled. It was really possible. Otherwise, it would be hard to explain concubine Lan's arrogant behavior. However, he heard that the Rain Emperor was a woman. Back then, she also fell into the God-Sealing Valley alone, without bringing her friends and subordinates. Could they be lesbians? Of course, concubine Lan didn't know that Wu Shan was thinking about dirty things at the moment. Her beautiful light eyebrows slightly curled up, but her beautiful eyes were full of surprise. She thought that since Yi Qinghan wanted to take her down so badly, he would either go to the Five Emperors Mountain to have a look after his injuries had healed, or he would come and pester her for a while. Who would have thought that he would immediately go into seclusion after recovering from his injuries? He didn't even care about the gazes of the people around him and was having fun by himself. This little man was indeed a little special. Concubine Lan thought to herself. She thought of that stubborn figure, that overbearing tone, and that lingering wet kiss. The corners of her mouth curled up inadvertently. I've been bored for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Isn't it quite fun to have such a little guy? Power of space, space ripple, space freeze, space lock, space shake. Above the two soul seas in Yi Qinghan's head, two miniature Yi Qinghan silhouettes were standing there. Each of Yi Qinghan's silhouettes was taking turns to cast all kinds of profound mysteries of space. He listened to the Oxhead God King's words and decided to continuously familiarize himself with the five fundamental mysteries, to let them become familiar with it to the point where they could leave. Of course, he would not forget the benefits of having two souls. Both souls were simulating and practicing at the same time. They were comparing, and verifying with each other. In this way, it would be easier to find the connection and fit between the two. From there, he would find the fusion point. As long as he could fuse a trace of it, it would be easy to deal with it in the future. Moreover, every time he comprehended something, he would enter a state of soul stillness. Every time he comprehended something, he would look at the beautiful woman dancing sword painting when he felt that there was no inspiration. He knew very well how precious that painting was. If he could comprehend a little bit of it, he might be able to fuse a basic, profound mystery into the entry level. Oh, I should have thought of that. All of a sudden, Yi Qinghan suddenly slapped his head and let out a loud cry. He opened his eyes, and his eyes were filled with smiles and a bright light. Space lock can lock a small part of space, and space freeze can make that part of space still. When the two are fused, the space will be more stable, and it will be easier to trap the enemy. When space lock and space freeze are fused, let's call it space freeze lock. After only 3 months of closed-door training, he had completed the cultivation of the soul stillness technique and had already reached the entry level of a basic, profound mystery. Yi Qinghan was in a good mood. With the soul stillness technique and his freakish soul, his comprehension speed was really fast. Not to mention anything else, just the simultaneous practice of two souls, comparing and verifying with each other, was something that no one in the immortal realm could do. How could his comprehension speed not be fast? He stretched and stood up, Seeing that Xiao He was not snoring, he was a little surprised. Using his soul to sense, he found that Xiao He was actually cultivating, and at a very deep level at that. His soul detection actually did not disturb him. Smiling, he directly put him into the bee space and let him continue cultivating. Then he walked out. While cultivating, he thought of something. He had forgotten about someone, the Oxhead Divine King. The Oxhead Divine King was a good person, and Yi Qinghan had promised him that he would think of a way to bring him up to the second floor. If he couldn't do it, he had plenty of holy fruits now, so it would not hurt to give him some every month. Walking on the second floor, Yi Qinghan did not want to disturb Concubine Lan. Instead, he walked to Wu Shan. Wu Shan's attitude towards him was good, and he was the commander of the second floor. It was best to go to him to get some information. However, as he walked, he felt that there seemed to be something wrong with the way the warriors on the second floor looked at him. In the past, they were respectful and surprised, but now there was a hint of jealousy and disdain in addition to respect. He had been cultivating in the training room. He did not offend anyone, did he? Yi Qinghan was a little puzzled, but he did not think too much about it. He did not rely on them to make a living now, and Concubine Lan had promised that she would not make things difficult for him. It did not matter what others thought of him. When he walked to a long corridor and reached a crossroads, Yi Qinghan saw two warriors in front of him looking at him coldly. There was even an obvious mocking smile at the corner of their mouths. He was slightly stunned and turned to the left in a daze. Unexpectedly, he bumped into a huge wall, which made him stagger. The huge recoil forced him to take several steps back in a row. Humph! Are you blind? Just as Yi Qinghan stared at the huge wall, the opposite wall spoke. The sound was like thunder in the middle of the night, causing Yi Qinghan's eardrums to explode in pain. It also woke up the nearby warriors. When they clearly heard the contents of the conversation and saw the wall and Yi Qinghan, they all revealed expressions of schadenfreude in their eyes and surrounded him. Yi Qinghan squinted his eyes and looked at the huge man in front of him. The huge man was at least 3 meters tall and looked abnormally muscular. His entire body was covered in long hair, and there was a rhinoceros-like horn on his head. He knew very well that even if he was distracted, it was impossible that he did not notice such an expert coming. The only explanation was that the giant man on the opposite side deliberately restrained his breath and bumped into him directly. "I'm sorry, Your Excellency. I was in a hurry and didn't see clearly." Although Yi Qinghan knew that the other party did it on purpose, he knew that the strength of the martial artist on the opposite side was obviously above the God King realm. He was not clear about the distribution of forces on the second floor. Although he had Concubine Lan's support, it was better not to be nosy. So he lowered his head and apologized. "Sorry? Do you think it's enough to say sorry after bumping into me? I'll sleep with your wife and then apologize to you. How about that?" The giant man obviously did not want to give up. With a cold light in his eyes, he shook his body and directly shrouded Yi Qinghan. He shouted in a deep voice, "Kneel down." Yi Qinghan's eyes narrowed even more, but the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. Those who were familiar with him would know that he was already extremely angry. This person actually dared to use his wife as a joke. This had already made him want to kill. He glanced at the giant man and then at the surrounding warriors. Finally, he saw Wu Shan in a hurry from afar. He smiled brightly and said, "I'm ashamed. I don't have the habit of kneeling. I don't know how to kneel. Why don't you imitate it for me?" You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.